session. All right.
Thank you. I don't like drinking out of a bottle in front of everybody.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you were going outside to get a cup. All right, we're going to get started here. Good evening. We will be starting in 1 minute. Good evening. I'm calling to order the City of Grand Terrace City Council and Successor Agency meeting of February 9th, 2016. If you desire to address the City Council during the meeting, please complete a request to speak form available at the entrance and present it to the City Clerk, and speakers will be called upon at the appropriate time. And so, having said that, we will be having an invocation tonight by Councilmember Doug Wilson, and immediately following that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Mitchell. If you would all please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
O God, the eternal Father, we come before Thee in the earnest desire to do good, in accordance with the laws of our community, under the authority granted by the Government Code. We are grateful for the free agency afforded us in this mortal life in the United States of America. We ask for your blessing upon this proceeding so that the good of the community might be served, so that lives may be magnified, and so future generations may benefit and progress. Lord, please bless us with a small measure of Thy intelligence and Thy majestic patience. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Will you join me in pledging our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Council Members Wilson and Mitchell. We have no special presentations tonight, so we'll go to the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the City Council and the successor agency at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for discussion. And at this time, we will only take the consent calendar for the council meeting, and we will do the successor agency item later on in the meeting. I've had one request to remove item 4 from the consent calendar. Are there any other requests to remove items?
A motion to move the balance.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion and second to remove balance of consent calendar. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNoble voted aye.
Thank you. Item 4, this is the one that's removed from the consent calendar, and it's been removed since it's an agreement between the City of Grand Terrace and Interwest Consulting Group. May we have a staff report, please? Before we go there, I was reminded that we did not have roll call. Madam City Clerk, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Hussey,
Present.
Councilmember Wilson,
I'm here.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Robles,
Present.
Mayor McNoble.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, maybe we have a staff report on item number 4, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Sandra Molina, City of Grand Terrace Community Development Director.
This item is before the council. It is an amendment to our professional services agreement with Interwest Consulting Group. Back in September, the council entered into an agreement to have them perform a pavement management index study for the city of Grand Terrace, and then also to provide project management service for the Barton Road I-215 interchange project. We did receive some correspondence from Caltrans regarding a federal program called the Highway Performance Monitoring System, and they asked the city to provide updated information regarding the physical characteristics and conditions of their streets. We haven't done that in quite some time, and we don't have the resources in-house to provide that. Because Interwest is doing the pavement management plan index study, it kind of fell right into what they're already doing for us. So they did look at the scope of what would need to be done to provide this information to Caltrans, and the cost of that is approximately $2,200. And so we're asking the city council to appropriate the $2,200 from the gas tax fund in order to approve the scope.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions of staff? Okay. Are there any requests to speak on this item? No? Okay, I'll bring it back to council for consideration of motion.
Mayor, I move approval for this item number 4.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNable voted aye.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not appearing on our regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. I may also request a brief response from staff to any questions raised during public comment, or may request a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Madam City Clerk, do we have request to speak form for this time? Thank you. Our first speaker tonight is Manuel Baltierra.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Manuel Baltierra. I'm here today representing Healthy GT, and I just wanted to bring the council and its members an update on 2 programs that we have that we're going to be starting very soon. The first one is the Alive at 25 program, and this is a defensive driving course for teens. We are losing our teens at a terrifying rate in accidents. In 2012, the last time figures were given or recorded, we had over 243,000 teens injured or killed in the United States. Our teens are dying, as I mentioned, in an alarming rate. This is a 4-hour program with the teens, and we discuss the dangers that they encounter in driving their motor vehicles. And we talk about speeding, peers, the peer pressure that's in the vehicles, driving with a driver that's under the influence, or driving with somebody who's under the influence of stupidity, which is just as dangerous. So as I mentioned, it's a 4-hour interactive class. We're going to be holding that class at Cal Skate on February 22nd from 4 to 8 p.m. The second program I wanted to mention was the Parent Project. This is a program that is still in the works. We've got the program together. We just need to find a location and a date to start it. These are for parents who are struggling with strong-willed, out-of-control teens. It's once again, it's just an interactive program. We talk about love and affection, arguing with your child. We talk about truancy. We talk about drug and alcohol. We'll show the parents all the up-to-date drugs that are popular with the teens today. The parents will be able to recognize when the child is under the influence just by looking at them. And these are things that the parent will learn in the class. We also talk about friendship. What is a friend? Gang relationships. In Unit 6, we'll actually work out a 6-step outline to correct the most negative behavior that the child has. With this program, we will change negative behavior but of course, we need the parents, and we need the parents to get involved. But both these programs are excellent programs. As I mentioned, the first one is already in the works, and the second one we're still working on. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baltiera. Our next speaker is Patricia Farley.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Farley, and I want to express concern about, I've noticed for a while now that the minutes don't reflect what people say a lot of times, and I think what citizens say is important. And one of the reasons it's important is because when we comment on an item, we are protecting our legal rights, and we are told that if we don't speak up and it's not on the public record, that we forfeit our rights on certain things. And so I'm noticing that the comments on different things are not being reported, and not only for myself I want the record on it, but I want the record of the number of other citizens that also express the same concerns. So I'd like to see more complete minutes. The other thing I'd like to comment on is in this letter from the City Council roundup here. We keep getting different information about what the intention of the city is on Michigan. And right in this, there's something that argues with a map that's in the agenda for something else, where it's basically saying that you're going behind, staff is currently working with Sangbag behind the backs of those property owners on Michigan to include the entire length of Michigan and modify the number of lanes. So it's different than the maps that you're showing us, and I'm getting tired of this. Okay, because it's basically saying you're going behind my back and trying to get something in that we have over and over expressed concern about. So I just want to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farley. Next speaker is Jeffrey McConnell.
Jeffrey McConnell, Walnut Avenue. I spoke on this issue, it was on the agenda last council meeting, the medical marijuana, one of the bans that the city wrote into some of their laws. I printed this out, I gave copies to the Pat for you to read, or pass out, whatever. So I was going to read this for the record. Governor Jerry Brown signed emergency legislation on the 2nd of February, I believe, February 3rd, that seeks to dissuade California cities and counties from enacting municipal restrictions, which is what you guys did last council meeting, on the cultivation and dispensing of medical marijuana. And this measure takes effect immediately. So the Assembly Bill 21 amends a drafting error in the Medical Marijuana Regulation Safety Act by removing an apparent March 1st, 2016 deadline, which you guys acted on, for localities to establish their own cultivation regulations or else forfeit that authority to the state. And it was in the newspaper, local newspaper, a week or two ago. For localities to establish their own cultivation regulations or else forfeit that authority to the state. It also removes objectionable language authorizing local governments to prohibit patients from cultivating, storing, donating, processing marijuana for their own personal medical use, and by doing so reaffirms that qualified patients have the right under state law to engage in personal cultivation absent a city or state license. Now, for those who are here that don't know, I brought in two patients. One was a care recipient that I take care of for the last 10 years. She's had MS since 1984. And her friend who has brain cancer has been fighting for 10 years, and they were also in the newspaper. So I'm not suggesting for anybody who's listening that you put on a dispensary on Barton Road or anything to that. What I was fighting for these patients last meeting was strictly to not have the city restrict the true, as I said, medical marijuana patients and not the pseudo-fake patients that you see or hear a lot about. So some cities have taken this on. Palm Springs has taken it on. They're a very liberal city. They're including some major for-profit cultivation. And the city of Adelanto, who most of you may know is in serious financial straits, they're taking this on too wholeheartedly, but that's their business, not ours. Just FYI. So, moving on. In recent months, numerous California cities and counties have hastily enacted provisional bans on medical marijuana-related activities out of fear that the state would become the sole authority on the issue following March 1st deadline. The passage of AB 21 states that localities retain the ability to regulate medical marijuana production and commerce in the manner that they see best. The hope is that localities will halt efforts to impose restrictions or will reconsider moratoriums. Now that it is clear that local lawmakers will continue to possess the authority to legislate the issue beyond March 1st of this year. So, so hopefully you take that on account, because some of you did make some comments about true patients, and some of you know some people. So all I'm saying is, here it is, it's out in the public now. Please talk about it, keep control, keep Grand Terrace safe, but consider the compassionate law of California's medical marijuana compassionate law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Next request to speak form I have is from Josh Morgan. Now, Mr. Morgan has emailed something into our city clerk and has asked that she read this for the record. So, Madam City Clerk, would you please do that?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Grand Terrace officials. My wife Lacey and I live on Etten Drive with our toddler and newborn. As you know, noise from the Orange Show, especially insomniacs, raves, violate our noise ordinances and create miserable evenings and disturbed sleep. We have even been able to hear lyrics inside our home. Last night there was another event at Orange Show. I don't believe it was by Insomniac, where we heard loud thumping and voices. Voices could be heard over the loudspeakers. Insomniac has another event scheduled for this Saturday, February 13th. Complaints to the San Bernardino City Policy, the sheriff, and Insomniac seem useless as nothing is done. The town meeting a couple of years seems to have been talk only as the problem persists. Promises have been made as recently as last November, but there is no evidence anything has changed as our sleep continues to be disturbed. What is the city doing to advocate for and protect its residents and the peace of our community, to ensure the noise does not disturb us? While these events may bring huge income to a needy city, another city should not have to bear the costs. If you have made a deal with them, then they are contributing funds to Grand Terrace from the income of the raves and other events. I look forward to hearing how you are representing us. Thank you, Josh Morgan.
Thank you. Our next request to speak form is from Ashley Jones on behalf of Assembly Member Cheryl Brown.
Good evening, honorable members of the City Council. It's great to see all of you here. I have a few brief announcements, as mentioned, on behalf of your Assembly Member Cheryl Brown. The first one is Assembly Member Brown would like to announce that she has just released a brochure providing an update on her legislative accomplishments. Looks like this. It's really pretty green. And I left some brochures on the table as residents would exit. And also, the brochure can be obtained by calling our office at 909-381-3238. Next, Assemblymember Brown is in the process of scheduling her 4th annual free tax preparation event. This event is for individuals and families with a household income of up to $53,000. We prepare their taxes for free. So you may call 909-381-3238, and we will keep a record, and we'll contact you as things progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Are there any other requests to speak at this time? Okay, if not, I'm going to close public comment, and I will come back to my council colleagues for their communications. We'll start with Council Member Bill Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody who came out tonight, and I want to thank the people who got up and speak. I know sometimes it takes a lot of courage to get up and speak, but we do, as a council, want to hear your comments. And first of all, we had that Cradle to Career, the last meeting, and I forgot to thank one department which the city runs is our daycare. My sons went there, and I know all your teachers, your assistants, and everything also help with that Cradle to Career to get the kids ready for school. So thank you. Announcement this Friday night at 7 p.m. is the Evening of Magic at Grand Terrace High School. The cost is $7. It's going to be at the auditorium. It's a fundraiser for the band and the color guard. So if you guys aren't doing anything Saturday or Friday night, they have a magic show for $7. And I was out of state this last week, and while I was there, I was in Roanoke, Texas, and I observed a skateboard park. I know that was mentioned on some of the residents here, so I just went to go take a look at it. And pretty neat state of the art, and I was really impressed with a lot of the kids there who actually looked after the little kids, and they took their time, and everybody seemed to have a good family time there. So I just want to mention that. And then one thing, I was on the phone with a lot of residents, and one thing in particular, I know it's going to be on an item for a bus driver, but I'd just like to say this before I forget. Seniors, Mr. Duffy, I'd like to see if we have something. I know we mentioned about picking seniors up for lunch and stuff, that if we could do that. But I also like to see some seniors were questioning that they can't make it to city council meetings, if we could some kind implement that, if we could, if they call for a ride on the council meeting, if we could do something like that. So instead of just watching it on the cable, they could also get involved with their community if they can't get a ride. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Doug Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank everybody for being here and participating in their government. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Jackie Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to apologize up front. I got a little bit of a scratchy voice tonight. I have a couple events to report on and then a couple comments. Community leaders, first responders, and our own mayor and many others attended the Grand Terrace View Elementary School as superheroes. We displayed signs of encouragement and inspiration for our young folks as part of the anti-bullying campaign. It's great to see so many people spreading a positive message, especially for our young residents. And our mayor was quite the Batwoman, and it was really, really cute, really great to see you out there and the rest of our community leaders. On February 3rd, I attended the San Bernardino Countywide Gangs and Drug Task Force meeting. The Youth Action Project presented information on the program that helped develop skills and habits needed for economic and social success for San Bernardino's youth. The organization focuses on assisting youth with graduating from high school, completing college or vocational training, and helps develop work skills. If you're interested in more information, please call 909-915-1714. Again, that's the Youth Action Project. I also participated in the superintendent's book club for Grand Terrace High School. The #1 seller, Lean In, was discussed among the Grand Terrace High School students and adult guests, special guests. I was thoroughly impressed with the caliber of the youth that participated in the book club. They were mature, solid thinkers, and I'm proud to see quality children in our community and within our schools. I also want to congratulate our former mayor and his wife, Walt Monique Stankiewicz, on the birth of their very first grandchild, Gage Walter Spence, who's born last Friday evening, 8 pounds, 21 ounces, and he looks like he's just a bundle of joy. So congratulations to the grandparents and the parents. Also, I'd like to ask that city staff obtain copies from Mrs. Farley on the conflicts that exist with our newsletter and what other publications we have going out. And then, Mr. Hussey, I love your thought about picking up the seniors for our council meetings. I never thought of that, and I just think it's a great idea. That concludes my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Sylvia Robles.
Yes, my husband and I were at Stater Brothers today and ran into former Mayor Walt Stankiewicz, and he shared the good news. He's absolutely glowing, and we want to also extend, we told him we have 10 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild, so welcome to the club, and he just looks really beaming over it. I have quite a few things on Omnitrans that I'll try to go through. At the general board meeting last Wednesday, we adopted, proposed, and amended and restated joint powers agreements and authorized submission to all member agencies for adoption. We authorized the CEO, general manager, to begin negotiations with San Bernardino Associated Governments for maintenance of equipment and rail operation services for the Redlands Passenger Rail Project. And this is important because Sandbag implements the projects that are done through a special tax through Measure I, but they're not going to be the operator. Amatrans is a federal transportation agency, so that is getting sorted out. We also adopted a resolution declaring Amatrans Rancho Cucamonga property surplus and authorized the sale by public auction. They expect to get $1.2 million to the general fund, so this is quite significant. We approved an agreement with the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority Measure I for Consolidated Transportation Services Agency funds. We received and filed the fiscal year 2016 Annual Management Plan Strategic Initiatives. And those are the major events that happened then. Oh, the one other thing that's happening is the VTrans that was a sub-agency of Sandbag is now being dissolved. The money's being returned to Sandbag, and Amatrans is absorbing that responsibility, and they'll become Amatrans employees. So it's good to see the two bodies really exercising best practices and implementing a management plan. The only one thing is I've been reading a lot of social media that people have concerns about Sandbag being a secret agency. And one thing that became kind of interesting about that is the complexity of Sandbag and even Omnitrans when you have large joint power authorities. The thing that I found wonderful about the Omnitrans exercise, it was, at least for me, to participate in some visioning. And I thought maybe one of the things that we can do as a body is maybe do some forums on transportation issues to kind of get a feel of what the constituents that we serve want. I can't think of any way of doing what Sandbag does better or what Omnitrans does better other than maybe have some communication lines, some public forums. And I don't think that the intention of any of these bodies is to do anything in secret. It's just pretty difficult when you're working on regional basis to get things done. And so it has some flaws, but I think overall it works quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So as that is a segue, I will be reporting on my board meeting at Sandbag. And not only on social media do people talk about it being a secret organization, but people actually come to Sandbag meetings and tell us we're a secret organization, trying to do things behind people's back. And what I've noticed on being on this board for a little over a year now is the size of the projects are so big that portions of them come to Sandbag. And if you weren't there when it first came as a totally designed project, it seems like you're only getting to talk about little pieces of it at a time. What really happens is they come and they talk about a large project, and then they break it down for the phases that they're doing, and there are improvements for those phases. And so it's a lot of money that Sandbag is spending. It really is, as is Omnitrans. And this is taxpayer money. This comes from Measure I funds, but it also comes from federal dollars as well as state dollars. So there is a lot of responsibility on this Sandbag board, but there is a lot of documentation on their website, and the staff will entertain requests for more information. It really takes a resident wanting to know about a specific item, and unfortunately what ends up happening is I think a lot of times, unless you know what to ask for, it seems like you're getting the runaround as well. So if there are any questions that residents have of Sandbag and you're having difficulty getting information, as the representative to Sandbag for our city, please let me know and I will help you get the information on a particular project if you'd like it. So having said that, at our meeting on February 3rd, we did have some consent calendar items. One was on project delivery, and we break these out separately. And so we awarded a on-call right-of-way legal service contract for major projects. We approved plans and specifications and estimates for signalization of the I-215 Iowa Avenue Lacadena Drive interchange. Those are those little lights that keep you from going on the freeway when you think you get to actually get on the freeway. when it gets backed up, they'll give you the red light and they'll let one car go at a time. We also looked at MetroLink transportation program, cooperative agreements with stakeholder cities, new cooperative agreements and procurements for the I-10 Mount Vernon Avenue interchange project, Amendment 2 to the I-10 Tippecanoe interchange construction management contract with Simon Wong Engineering, new contracts for public outreach services for major projects. And so there is public outreach component of every single project that Sandbag does, and that amounts to a lot of times public meetings, but it also amounts to mailers, to things that they put on their website, and it's tuning into a particular meeting and maybe signing up to get communications from Sandbag if you have a particular interest, and maybe it's outside of the area that you live. Also on consent calendar, we look at regional and sub-regional planning. So we looked at a 2015 update to development mitigation nexus study. We looked at a consent calendar items for transit and rail, Redlands Passenger Rail Project programmatic environmental impact reports for San Bernardino and Redlands, contract amendments with Parsons Brinkerhoff for the San Bernardino Transit Center, final design and environmental clearance for the Shortway Subdivision Quiet Zone Project, repeal of rail right-of-way policies. Also on the consent calendar were transportation programming and fund administrative items for the State Route 210 Baseline Avenue term loan agreement with the City of Highland. We approved that. The advance expenditure agreement for the State Route 62 in the City of 29 Palms, the 2017 Federal Transportation Improvement Program, the Major Local Highway Program Sub-Area Project List for the North Desert Sub-Area, and we received an update from Unmet Transit Needs. Under discussion, we looked at transportation programming and fund administration item, the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency services and operations in San Bernardino Valley. Under project delivery, we discussed hearings for the consideration of resolution of necessity for parcels for the I-215 Barton Road Interchange Improvement Project area in Grand Terrace. And that is the beginning of acquisition and eminent domain proceedings on certain parcels for the I-215 Barton Road interchange project here in our city. What they've done with a number of these parcels as they're negotiating with the parties, they continue to negotiate, but they start the proceedings so that if they can't get to a particular agreement with a party and a parcel or temporary access to a parcel is needed for this project to go forward, then they will continue on with eminent domain. These items, again, are on the Sandbag website if this is a particular concern that you would like to know more about. The I-10 corridor project, this is the examination of whether we will have express lanes on the I-10. They are going for federal credit worthiness evaluation and rating. The Interstate 10 and I-15 corridor projects, they also looked at legal advisor services. We discussed under Council of Governments, grant writing services, and approved an RFP for that. Participation in joint feasibility study of community choice aggregation with Western Riverside Council of Governments. And what that means is this particular body and one in the Riverside County area are looking at the idea of creating a utility that would compete with Southern California Edison. I voted no on that, but it is going forward. That one was split. That actual vote won by one member of this board, and so they will be doing this joint feasibility with the Western Riverside Council of Governments. We also discussed very briefly, and it will be more of a discussion, that at the state level they are looking at cutting transportation funding for projects all through the state. What they have found is that the levels of gas tax revenue that were projected have fallen dramatically, and part of that, some blame on the lower cost of fuel, and that is a component of it. The other component of it is alternative fuel vehicles, and so since they don't use gas, or they don't use as much gas, there is not as much gas tax revenue associated with that. And so for some of the projects at the sandbag level, they are looking for other ways to fund them. At this time, they are looking for federal dollars to fund our interchange here locally. So I will move from that to say that I also attended a special meeting of our oversight committee for the former redevelopment agency, and we approved the ROPS item that is actually on our council agenda tonight. And then one last thing is in response to the issues that we are having with the noise complaints for the National Orange Show and their concert series, the city manager and I will be meeting with National Orange Show management staff Thursday of this week to discuss with them some of the issues that we're having. And so that will close out my comments for this portion of the meeting, and we will go on to public hearing. So we have one item for public hearing tonight, and to speak on hearing items, please fill out a request to speak form and give it to the city clerk. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to address the city council. If you challenge in court any action taken concerning a public hearing item, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the hearing. And since there was a concern about this particular issue, I'm going to ask our city clerk, you don't record necessarily the comments that are made in our agenda minutes. How are these preserved for a particular public hearing such as this so that if a challenge did come up, there would be a record of that?
We do have them recorded, and we keep the recordings.
Okay. So the fact that they don't come out in our minutes does not mean that they are not recorded. And if somebody wanted to come and ask for a copy of those recorded comments, you would be able to make that available.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
And in March, if everything goes as we are moving forward with the streaming, everybody will have access to it on the website.
Thank you very much. Okay. May we have a staff report, please, on item of prioritization of community development block grant funds for the program year 2016-2017.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. For the record, Adrienne Freeman, Management Analyst with the Community Development Division or Department. This staff report supports in part our vision of a place where residents can enjoy quality of life that fosters pride and an engaged community. The city participates in the federally funded Community Development Block Grant Program administered by the San Bernardino County Economic Development Agency. Just as an overview, we wanted to go over the process, the CDBG funding process for council. First, the county publishes the notice of funding availability for the upcoming program year in October. Sometimes it can happen in November, but generally it's in October. The city also notifies past applicants of the available funding and the December deadline for their applications to be submitted. The organizations submit their completed applications directly to the county in December. They do not submit their applications to the city. They go directly to the county. Then the county receives all applications, reviews them, and they forward to us only those that are eligible for consideration, generally in January. And with the request that we make recommendation of funding prioritization. The City Council then conducts a public hearing as we are tonight, or as you are tonight. And then that recommendation that's provided by Council is forwarded to the county in March. And then the Board of Supervisors hears the various programs or projects that we have brought forward for approval. The city received 6 proposals that either provide assistance to underserved target populations or eliminate blight in our community. Unfortunately, the city cannot provide allocations to all 6 proposals due to county regulations. They've only allowed 4. So staff suggests the following 4 projects be given consideration. First, we have enhanced code enforcement by the City of Grand Terrace. Secondly, a literacy program by the San Bernardino County Library. Third, the senior nutrition program by the Family Services Association. And also the recreation, education, and creative arts programs for youth that is offered by the Rec Center. All of these programs were actually awarded funding in the 2015-16 program year, so we would ask that they would continue to receive funding for the upcoming 2016-2017 program year with the same funding allocation. There was a request for some statistics. We wanted to provide just a little snapshot for the code enforcement enhancements. On average, each month, our code enforcement does about 44 inspections, along with some other services that are provided under this grant, totaling an average of 14 hours of service per month. For the literacy program, they're projected to serve about 24 individuals for one-on-one tutoring for reading literacy, and so far 13 have been served to date. For the senior nutrition program, on average about 434 meals are served each month at the senior center. And in addition to that, the Family Services Association provides about 118 home-delivered meals per month. And lastly, the Rec Center. On average, they are serving about 67 youth per month here in the city of Grand Terrace. At this time, staff is recommending that council take the following actions: conduct a public hearing, and after the public hearing, prioritize funding allocations and authorize staff to submit the city's community development block grant funding recommendation to the County of San Bernardino Economic Development Agency. Staff is happy to answer any questions that council may have at this time.
Thank you, Analyst Freeman. Does council have any questions of staff at this time? Okay. Hearing none, I will open the public hearing. And I do have 2 requests to speak forms in front of me. The first one is from Tom Donahue of Family Services Association.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor McNamara, council staff, and to my fellow nonprofits and organizations that serve the residents of Grand Terrace. My name is Tom Donahue. I'm the program administrator for Family Service Association. I presented to the city clerk a brochure that explains who Family Service Association is. We're a multidisciplinary organization that provides services throughout Riverside and San Bernardino County for over 63 years. The program that you've helped to support for the last several years is our senior nutrition program. The program provides meals to seniors at your Grand Terrace Senior Center as well as home-delivered meals. We're on pace to serve about 175 unduplicated seniors that are residents of Grand Terrace and serving over 8,000 meals to your community. And the big thing that I think each community, when you issue out a recommendation for funding, is how do those dollars impact our citizens? What is the return on our investment? And the big thing is we heard about some of the reports we had from council is how do we leverage our dollars? And our program comes from funding from 3 sources. The main program funding comes through the federal government, managed through the state to the county. It's about 80%. 10% is contributions by the people who participate. And the remaining 10%, your dollars, help us to sustain the program. As you know, with funding, there's ups and downs of funding. This year, when we started the program in San Bernardino County, our funding levels dropped significantly to where it was in the past year. That meant the clients that we enrolled now doesn't have the funding to make it happen. So the funding you provide helps sustain the program and also helps us to grow the program. The city of Grand Terrace has about 12% of your population over the age of 65, and we appreciate your attention and support to the seniors in this area. I love the council advocacy for transportation. One of the biggest barriers we have to sustaining seniors to have a viable quality of life is getting them access to your community center. It is one of the best parts of the program. Home delivered is the last resort. The congregate program and what you put together at the senior center is where we want our seniors to be served. Omnitrans and I think OmniGo in the past have had programs where they did target funding for senior transportation. Caravan and others throughout the county provide these types of services. If this is a path that you wish to go down, Family Service would be more than willing to partner with you to advocate for funding and for that type of program and resources for your seniors. One of the other things you get with Family Service in the way of leveraging is our other programs. The most recent program that you'll note in your book is called FSA Mobile Fresh. It is a mobile grocery store on wheels. And we're proud to say that Omnitrans is also working with us to sponsor and donate a bus to our program. And all we need to do is find the dollars to retrofit it. And then we'll have those buses on the road throughout San Bernardino County additionally. We appreciate your support in this, but I wanted to have one last 6 degrees of separation story for the city of Grand Terrace. We lost a great advocate about a year ago in Betty Marshall, who was a longtime figure at the center. But one of the volunteers that she helped mentor there happened to be a Grand Terrace resident. And we noticed her passion and her enthusiasm, and if you know Betty, it's her way or the highway. And Betty was able to groom her and get her ready and instill in her a love for not only what she does as a cook, but also for the service. She is now working with us in our office and will be much part of our future and is a resident of Grand Terrace. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue.
You're welcome.
I have another request to speak form, and that's from Natasha Flores.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the Rec Center of Grand Terrace, and I am the chair of the board of directors. I wanted to speak a little bit on some of the programs that we offer. This past year in 2015, we served 389 students. Estimated reach for the whole community was 4,851 through events, community service, classes that we offer, and our anti-bully efforts. Right now, we are at about $12,000 a year for rent. So the amount of money that we get from the CDBG helps offset that, because we're able to put that into our personnel and materials, and we can focus more on paying the rent and not so much worry about those other things. So we really depend on it, and it really helps us grow our program, because we are still in our grassroots stages, and we have grown steadily each year and been able to offer more and more programs each year because of this funding. Our mission is enriching communities by promoting recreation, education, creative arts programs, especially in communities with limited resources, and that qualifies for our community because we do not have a Parks and Recs department. So we try to fill that void, and we want to make sure that we get the support from the community, and we are very, very thankful for this money, and I just wanted to speak on it a little bit. We'll be having upcoming soon an egg hunt in joint with the fire department the Saturday before Easter. So that'll be our next event if anyone is interested in that, and hopefully I can see you all there. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for our past funding.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Any other individuals that would like to speak during this time? Okay, if not, I will close the public hearing and come back to council for their comments and prioritization of funding. Councilmember Hussey.
I just have a question, Mayor. The rec center, stating that, short on fund stuff, that Mr. Duffy, the community benefit fund, do we put aside money for that also for the rec center? Because I know we had it for the youth programs. Were they able to utilize any of that?
Councilman Hussey, we do have, the community benefit fund has revenue there. However, it's not set aside, but they certainly can apply for any grant. Actually, they submitted one just this week.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I just wanted to compliment the Family Services Agency. I've been going to the senior center since I qualify now, and it's just phenomenal what you do with such limited funds. And the food is plentiful, and it's very good. And the cook was a little bit worried because I didn't know it was whole wheat tortillas. I just knew they kind of disintegrated, but they taste wonderful because they were whole wheat. But it tasted wonderful. The other thing too is the rec center. I read your stuff, and I've always been a proponent of recreation. I realized a lot of people, and it finally came to me last week. I've never been an athletic person as a kid, so for me it was the recreational opportunities that were not sports related that was very important to my upbringing. And I just hope at some point, and I say it each year, that we can take on code enforcement and not be competing with social service needs for code enforcement in that fund. I'd like to see us move away from that. We're still in a tenuous financial spot, but let's make that a goal to move away from that and free up the funds. And I'm glad the rec center is submitting for the community benefits fund, and I do support the recommendation.
Councilmember Mitchell.
I'm going to brief. I'd like to just thank all 6 agencies that applied for the grant, and I appreciate the desire to partner with us, and I also would support staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Wilson.
Mayor, I'd just like to get a greater explanation of what the enhanced code enforcement CDBG census area means. We do code enforcement throughout the city. I'd like to find out how this dovetails to what code enforcement we do now. It's a pretty good sized number.
Director Molina.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Wilson. So the enhanced, well, first of all, the census tract code enforcement area is essentially everything west of the I-215 freeway. And so code enforcement does regular code enforcement throughout the city, but because this isn't a census tract area identified through the CDBG program, it qualifies for activities, various activities, and one of those is public service for enhanced code enforcement. What that means is that extra time is spent in that census tract area. There's a commercial center. There are commercial centers in that area. One of them had particular problems with vacancies, and so sometimes they'll get some vandalism. There's certain areas that there's just vandalism of our street signs, and so we're able to be more on top of those areas because we do have the additional hours that we spend there. And as indicated, it's about 44 inspections throughout the month and about 14 extra hours we spend in that area.
Ms. Molina, I guess my question then, the only other question I might have is, there is no recovery of this cost other than this funding. In other words, if the additional funding, there are no fines involved, there are no penalties or anything else?
Through code enforcement actions, you mean?
Yes.
Potentially there are. If just like any other code case, if we enter the citation phase, then we would recover those fines, and so potentially there's an offset, but it would be difficult from year to year to determine what that would be. It would be after the fact.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any alternate prioritization other than the one offered by staff?
If there are no additional alternatives, I'll motion to move staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and second for staff recommendation of prioritization of funding allocations. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item 6, which is the renaming of Pico Park to honor veterans serving in the United States Armed Services. May we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening, Mayor. For the record, G. Harold Duffy, the city manager. On July 28, 2015, the City Council approved resolution number 2015-30, establishing policies and procedures for renaming the city-owned land, building, and facilities. To ensure transparency, the mayor is to send any request for renaming or naming of a city-owned land or building facility to the appropriate City Council subcommittee or establish a special council subcommittee called Facility Naming Committee. On August 4, 2015, Councilman William Hussey requested the city rename Pico Park to Veterans Park. And on November 24, 2015, the request was presented to the council, and the mayor appointed Councilman Hussey and Mayor Pro Tem to the special subcommittee. On January 12, 2016, the renaming subcommittee met and received input from public input on the renaming of Pico Park. And on January 26, 2016, the minutes of the renaming subcommittee were presented to the City Council. During the January 26, 2016 meeting, Council Member Doug Wilson also suggested the City Council also consider renaming Pico Park to Hugh Grant Park. The renaming subcommittee received a number of positive comments on the merits of renaming Pico Park. The members of the renaming subcommittee also supported enhancements to the park to build on the veterans as established by the Freedom Wall. The renaming subcommittee informed staff to return to the council with a recommendation to rename Pico Park to one of three names suggested during the meeting: Veterans Park, Patriot Park, or Veterans Freedom Park. So based on that information, this report recommends that the City Council accept the recommendation of the Facility Naming Committee to rename Pico Park to one of the following names: Veterans Park, Patriot Park, or Veterans Freedom Park, and select one of the names and direct staff to have MIG, our park consultant, currently assessing all parks in Grand Terrace, to recommend enhancements to the park that will embrace the veterans theme, and return to the council before second meeting in May to approve implementations of any such plan. I'm available for questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I will open the public comment section of this item with request to speak forms. Thank you so much. And our first request is Rose Keller.
My name is Rose Keller. I live in Grand Terrace. I have lived in Grand Terrace for 45 years. I was here before the city was formed, and I worked with all of the founding fathers of the city to bring that into being. I very strongly feel that the park should be named after, to honor the veterans. I know Hugh Grant. I have known him in the past. I worked with him as a, in getting the city incorporated, as I did with many other members. My objection to naming the park after Hugh Grant would be, there are many other people in this city who should have an honor too. If we name it after Hugh, what are we going to name other places after other members of the incorporation committee and all of those people who have lived here? Naming it after, as a Veterans Memorial Park or Veterans whatever, it would be a great idea, because we would be honoring not only Hugh, who I'm sure served in the service, but I'm sure also that every member of this audience and the members of the council and everyone sitting here probably has had at some time someone in their family who was a veteran. And I know that there are several people here who are veterans now. I think that it's a good thing to name it after an individual or name something after an individual, but I think by naming the park Veterans Memorial Park, we would be honoring all of those veterans who live in this city and who have lived in this city and who have served. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keller. Our next speaker is Clarice Todd.
Thank you for letting me speak. I have lived in Grand Terrace for nearly 20 years. My first husband, my children's father, served in the military for 22 years. My older son was a pilot in the Air Force for 20 years. I have numerous grandchildren, son-in-law, grandson-in-law, and many family friends who have served in the military. I believe, I agree with the lady who just spoke. It's good to honor a person, but in this case, since we're going to have a memorial wall with names on it, I think people are going to come to the city are going to look for something that has to do with veterans or memorial. They're not going to know a name like the people here do. I didn't know Hugh. I'm sure he was a wonderful person. I think, too, in thinking about it, we have so many veterans now who are coming back not just physically wounded, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually wounded. To have a park that in any city or every city, I don't think is too much to ask to honor these people who their lives may never be the same again. So my first husband is deceased, but he was an honorable veteran, and I think naming the park for veterans would be an asset to us and a big boost in the arm for any veteran who is aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Todd. Our next speaker is Danny Flores.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Dan Flores Sr., and I live at 11902 Kingston Street for the past 25 years. First, I would like to thank the City Council and the City of Grand Terrace for the support given to make possible the building of the Freedom Wall at Pico Park. I'm here also in hopes that you will support the renaming of Pico Park to honor our military veterans. My wife and I have been talking to neighbors and people in Grand Terrace about the renaming of Pico Park, and they all think to agree it would be a great thing. I just think if we do rename Pico Park, we will show other communities that our great city of Grand Terrace really cares, supports, and honors our military veterans. So please, let's do this. And now that I've heard the different park names, I just like to throw mine in the hat. I kind of like Veterans Freedom Park, so, you know, if you guys kind of push him for that way, I think it's a great thing. So again, thank you, and I think it would be a great thing we do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Our next speaker is Jeff Allen.
City Council, Madam Mayor, I'm Jeff Allen, Brentwood Street, Grand Terrace for the past 17 years. I retired out of the Army after 22 years to Grand Terrace. I chose Grand Terrace. Every generation, my family, as far back as I can trace it, all the way to the Civil War, has fought in the military, and all my cousins, my uncles were really into the military. You know, it's sort of a family tradition. But I actually hesitated to support this at first because I thought there must be a reason why we chose Pico Park 30-something years ago, why we chose to honor Pio Pico. So I did some research, and for the life of me, I don't know what we're honoring him for. The guy did not support California becoming part of the United States. He fought against it. He quit being governor twice. He quit at almost everything and failed at almost everything he did. If somebody here is related to him, I apologize. I think a street named after him is fine. So after doing all the research, and I wouldn't support the first American governor of California either. You know, Mr. Burnett was a blatant racist, and he'd be an embarrassment to us. So I think we should stick with the veterans, because they're always in the right, the military. And there's active duty members of the military that live in this city, and they're not veterans yet. So, and there will be active duty members in the military growing up, so we need to, think about them too. So thanks a lot. I guess I'm just dittoing everybody else's comments here and wasting time, so I'll just sit down.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I appreciate you sharing the results of your research with us. Our next speaker is Dennis Kidd.
Honorable City Council members and city staff, Dennis Kidd, 22874 Pico Street, Grand Terrace, California. I'm opposed to changing the name of Pico Park. As I said before, Pio Pico was the last Mexican governor of California, but he was a Californian. When California became part of the United States, he didn't go to Mexico to live. He stayed in California and became a U.S. citizen because he loved California and California was his home. I was talking to Joanne Johnson, and she is in favor of retaining the name Pico Park. I talked to former Mayor Marietta Ferre, and she said if veterans and park are in the name, there could be confusion with Veterans Park in Colton. And as Jeffrey McConnell pointed out at the last City Council meeting, everybody knows where Pico Park is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidd. Next speaker is Rodney Spencer.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I've lived here my whole life. I've been a coach for Grand Terrace Sports for at least 20 years. I've coached here before Pico Park was made and after it was made. We used to play our games down the hill in Colony and at the middle school. And I also coached at the soccer park. At the time when I was a coach, they named Pico Park. I had no idea. I thought it was Pico because it was Pico Boulevard. And I had no idea why it was named that way. I just thought it was that. I am in favor of changing the name to a Veterans Park, especially after I just got done watching a film here on 9/11 on TV. It was played again. And I watched one of the military officers at the very end go in on his own, and he told the other guy that we're not coming back. And they went in and they found those officers underneath the rubble. And if it wasn't for that person, that veteran, I just think that we take them for granted of what our veterans do for us. And I think that of any of those three names that you pick would be awesome. And I think it should be done as soon as possible, this year sometime. That'll be awesome. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Okay, I have an email that came from Mr. Ed Greger. And this was actually written to Mayor Pro Tem. So instead of me reading his comments, I'm going to ask if you are able to see it, because I know it is small. But if you can, if you would please read Mr. Greger's statements.
Okay, this is from Ed Greger. It says, apparently tonight's meeting is going to get input regarding the Pico Park situation. I would love to attend and speak, but I cannot. If you have time, I would appreciate you taking a brief look at this. I also posted similar comments on 923. I am sure you all recall the naming controversy regarding the Grand Terrace High School and the hard feelings it produced. Some great individuals have gone beyond normal and created a Veterans Memorial Wall at Pico Park, and it is going to be a real beauty and a plus to our great city. I am looking as well as others to adding my dad and granddad to the wall. Regardless of the name, it will be great. However, when places are named for individuals, either other deserving individuals are left out, or many people don't know who the recipient is or was. Example, I have lived here for 38 years, and I'm not sure who Richard Wallens was or is. I do remember Hugh Grant, but only that he was one of our many city founding fathers. If you name the park for an individual that is in the future, however, if you rename it Veterans Park, it takes in the Veterans Memorial Wall as a great place for it to be displayed and honored. I'm sure if you take a citywide poll and ask residents if they knew Richard Wallens or Hugh Grant, the positive responses will be few, not taking away that they were great individuals. However, everyone knows at least one, if not many, veterans, and that title will endorse the memorial wall and make it grow in size and importance. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Ed Greger, Grand Terrace.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I have a request to speak from Yvonne Williams.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Yvonne Williams, and I'm a resident here in Grand Terrace. I'm a veteran as well. I served the United States Army from 1983 to 1992. My last orders was to Iraq. They were rescinded a few days after because they had surrendered. But my bags were packed and I was ready to go. I support, and I thank Jim and the Veterans Committee for spearheading this here. I just wanted to say that I support the renaming of the wall, and I kind of actually like the Veterans Freedom Wall because the name encompasses veterans, it's honoring our veterans, and then also the freedom for all of us. So, it's for all of us. But as an educator, I think about the tourism, and then I see children coming from schools and field trips and people from all over, visitors coming to Grand Terrace and just putting Grand Terrace on the map and inviting friends and people just to come and visit the wall and see the Freedom Wall, and so it's just a source of pride, and I support it, and so I just kind of wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item?
Jeffrey McConnell, Walnut Avenue. When this issue came up at the last agenda meeting, I spoke on it. When the room was extremely thin of people, of course, it came up on Facebook, and I encouraged, as others did, to come and speak tonight. So I appreciate those who came to speak and attend and listen and have your voice heard. So I'll recant some of what I said last council meeting. Our new park over on Grand Terrace Road, several years back, there was a difficulty in what we should name that. And I took it upon myself to collect 300 signatures. 25% of those were collected by Ms. Bobby Forbes here. And hence we now have Grand Terrace Fitness Park. One of the reasons we were kind of leaning towards that is because everybody would know where it was and what it was. So, and I also said that the naming of this park, the ad hoc committee, I didn't feel that was the right way to go because it's the people's park, and I always encourage then, as I do now, and on Facebook, The people need to speak and have their voice heard, and I believe you have heard their voice tonight, and if that's what you want to go with, then the people have spoken. So I'm glad everybody showed up. Whatever name you choose, my only concern is what it is and where it is. That's how people can find it. Many people have come to me and said over the years, where's Richard Rollins Park? I knew Richard Rollins. He was a great guy. I went to his funeral, one of the few people that showed up in that rainy night. But nobody knows where Richard Rollins is unless, of course, you've been there a dozen times. So I commend you on putting out the word again to let the people speak. It was the people's park. The people have the right to speak. I'm fine with veterans. I take care of my 88-year-old World War II vet who has Alzheimer's. And my grandfather was a Marine in World War I. And for those of you who don't know Hugh Grant, he was a fellow Lion Club, long-time Lion Club member. Also past mayor and past council member, and his picture's right up there on the wall to the far left. So for those of you who don't know, I just want to clear that up. And I have 40 seconds left. Oh, I forgot to mention, for anybody, if you're into solar projects over on Grand Terrace Road.
Please stay to the topic, Mr. McConnell.
There's a brand new project
Please stay to the topic,
Yes.
Mr. McConnell.
I thought of my veteran father when I saw that solar project. How's that?
Thank you. Anybody else who would wish to speak on the topic of renaming the park? Please. Please state your name for the record, sir.
Sure will. I'm Jim Miller. I live at 22996 Palm Avenue. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council. I appreciate what Mr. Hussey did, and also Councilwoman Robles. Attended the meeting that night, and there was not that many as we have here. I'm a veteran also, and I gave a lot of thought to what was happening at that time, and a lot of good points were brought up. The one thing that I thought was a little bit different was that everybody was thinking we would go ahead and do a Veterans Park. Well, the problem with Veterans Parks is that there's almost every city has a Veterans Park. And I think we have a little more uniqueness to ours. And the reason why is because there was a committee that was created. And I happen to be a late member of that committee, but there were others who have started and did a lot of hard work, have really pushed hard to try to get a memorial up. And finally, they were able to get enough benefactors who came forward so that we could go ahead and have the beautiful wall that we're going to have, which is the Wall of Freedom. When it was brought up, I thought that maybe one of the things that we could do is that instead of just saying a Veterans Park, if we're going to change it, I was thinking Veterans Freedom Park. And I brought up that suggestion that night and thought that that would be the way to go, and I've heard some people in support. I think any of the names would work. I know it will be contentious with the people who have been here quite a long time, and there's been Pico Park, and there's a lot of people who remember all the fine things that has happened at Pico Park. I don't think that, I'm sad to say that if it does get changed, that it wasn't the fact that we would change the street name from Pico to Veterans Freedom Street, and we still would have Pico Street. The other thing is that, and I respect Councilman Wilson and about Hugh Grant, and I've heard some of the other mention that there are other people in the city that could be recognized as well, but Hugh Grant was a good person, and he did a lot of work, and he was one of the founding council people and mayors of the city, and he does deserve recognition. And I think the council, or maybe not this council, but one in the future, may be thinking of things that come up, be it pocket parks, be it streets, be it anything that may be of value to the city that they could bring up that Hugh Grant could be representative of that, and his name could go on that, as well as anybody else who has done service for the city. But tonight I'm in support of us changing it. Again, it would be the Veterans Freedom Park, and I hope you will look at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no takers, I will bring it back to council for their discussion and consideration.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Wilson.
I'd like to clarify a couple of things. I am the councilman that talked about or suggested honoring Hugh Jordan Grant. But I'll start with this. I was on the Planning Commission when Pico Park received its name. There was nothing special to it. When the landscape architect started to create the plans, he didn't have a name for it, so he stuck Pico Park on it because that's where it was. There's nothing special associated with that. That's all it was. It was just that it was on Pico Street, and nobody opposed it, so he stuck it on the side of the plans. And that's how it became Pico Park. So far as I am positive, 100% positive, that Hugh Grant is the kind of individual who would support any variation honoring the veterans. But I think it's important to understand who he was and the reason why I suggested, and that is he was born October 12, 1931. He honorably served in the U.S. Army between 55 and 57, which means I was 2 and 4 years old at that time frame. He became a resident of Grand Terrace in 1970. He served on the Grand Terrace City Council for 14 years, between 78 and 92. His name is on the bronze plaque in the lobby, and he served as mayor of Grand Terrace between 1982 and 87. He also served the community, as it's already been discussed, as a lifetime Lion and one of the founding members of the Grand Terrace Lions Club. And the Grand Terrace Lions Club has done a great deal of good, not only in Grand Terrace, but also throughout the area. Our state of California has had a history of naming in public infrastructure after particular individuals. In this particular case, we wouldn't be able to do it. And when I made the suggestion, I was a little premature, and so what I will reveal is that we would have to put this off until June of 2016 to properly honor him if it was a suggestion to make it Hugh Jordan Grant Park, because we have to wait a year. So I am 100% sure that he would support any variation of the freedom or veterans or combination thereof, and I just wanted to give a little history on that and a little clarification.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Hussey.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, I wanted to know about Mr. Grant, and probably he's a veteran also, but thank you everybody for coming out tonight and speaking on our vets. The scripture came to my mind about this, and I was thinking about this all last week. I had phone calls and public support, but my dear brothers and sisters, this is from James 1, verse 19. Dear brothers and sisters, take note that everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. I think I observed that tonight. Everybody's quick to listen, slow to speak, and nobody's angry. My intent was never to divide this city into naming the park. My intent was just to honor the veterans. I have wrote numerous speeches, been out through my back and forth on the way from Texas, recorded myself. My wife thought I was crazy, but I'll just keep this brief. But like Mr. Spencer said, coaching baseball, basketball, soccer, we have a lot of youth in this city, a lot of youth that did great things. A lot of youth are serving our military right now. We have the Youngs, the Alvarezes. I could keep going on and on. The Moraleses, name a few, but they all played at Pico Park. So what a way to honor them by, Veterans Park. that's where we came that night. And another thing that got the motivation going was that great freedom wall that we have. That freedom wall says everything right there. As I said before, and everybody knows, freedom isn't free. We're paying that debt to this day. I paid for it. Mr. Grant paid for it. A lot of the other vets paid for it. Our future vets are still paying for it. It would be a debt that's never paid for. There's a lot of countries, a lot of enemies that want to take it away from us. So as a high school, as Mr. Larkin said, you've got high school students running by and seeing that wall of freedom, and I guess they're yelling freedom. You know, it stands for a lot. It stands for what our men and women fought for, this country, so everybody can be free. So last Veterans Day it was a day of reckoning. It was a proud day. The mayor spoke to how they came up with the Freedom Wall was a veteran, I guess, came up to her and asked, hey, what can the city do for, those veterans? We see in Colton, we see the banners, everybody getting recognized. We see other cities are getting recognized. So not knowing the complete history, I heard it that day is, they got together, a foundation, what Mr. Miller talked about, and Jim Ackwood, they got together a group of people, residents, foundations, club members that love this city, love the veterans. And everybody's effort for that came into play. You had people setting up meetings, you had people supervising the constructions, you have vets, and you had non-veterans. Everybody worked in that Freedom Wall. The sponsors who gave generously to support the Freedom Wall because they knew what that freedom stood for, and that was to honor our veterans. So I just think that Freedom Wall, that foundation just gave insight, is like we need to have honored ground for that Freedom Wall. We had that meeting that night, as Mayor Pro Tem said, she had great ideas that came up there, the kiosks and stuff. We had a lot of veterans come up here with other ideas. It opened up a whole different realm of what we could do to honor our veterans. The city manager had great ideas what he could utilize for a city to help our park here. Being on the council and being a military veteran after 9 years, I just think it's a great opportunity. This city is great. A lot of veterans, we support it. We spend time. We work here. We love it here. And if you ask any veteran today, no matter how old they are, how broke up they are, if our nation called upon it, we would dare to serve again. The 3 names that came out were an honor. Mine was just a generic name, veterans. Just me and veterans. I wanted the public's input on this. I just wanted one individual's name, one person to pick it out. The name that I really love, and really highlights, like Mr. Miller, he came up with this, is the Veterans Freedom Park. So, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a nomination to rename Pico Park the Veterans Freedom Park, and I will ask for your blessings if somebody second this nomination.
I will second that. And I'm going to thank Councilmember Hussey and Mayor Pro Tem for their time in this naming committee. You spend extra time, and I know that you were looking for public input at that time, and I think you did a great job. I want to say before we get further, and I will come to Councilmember Mitchell for your comments, I talked to somebody that was a resident in the city for over 50 years, and he asked me where Pico Park was. Just because it's on Pico Street doesn't mean people know where the park is. So I second your motion, and Councilmember Mitchell, you had a comment?
I have a few, and then I'm not sure if Pro Tem Robles would like to also make some comments. But first of all, I would like to thank, I always want to call you Bill, but Mr. Hussey for his passion and his determination and really dedication to this project. I think it speaks to your heart. I think it speaks to your loyalty and love for our country and for those that have served it. Pro Tem Mayor, you for your mindful thought, or your thoughtful mind and just your knowledge, and really I know when you take on a project you do it with your full mind and full heart as well, and I just appreciate the both of you taking this on. And a couple other comments. I think the Hugh Grant park is a great name, but I think that there are other ways to maybe recognize those that have made contributed to our city and have set milestones. So maybe there's something that we can come back to council with, or staff can come back to council with, that is a way to memorialize and remember those that have made contributions to our city, either through achievements or in other ways. So maybe that's something that we can do. Mr. Hussey, you spoke of our military folks paying by service. And I think even those that don't serve pay. We pay in a way that we send our loved ones off to serve our country. So we all pay in some way. And I think this is a huge thank you and appreciation to all of us for recognizing our service members and our veterans. So I too would support the naming of Veterans Freedom Park. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, you have the final word before we vote.
I just wanted to say that we have some people, our mayor, that through the Community Foundation, and my peer here, Mr. Hussey, have some pretty big ideas and are pretty tenacious. And because of that, we have a beautiful Freedom Wall, and we're also enhancing that with renaming it, and some really, really great ideas that came forward in our ad hoc meeting. And we're also blessed with a great city manager that's going to give some wind to our sails on that. I just want to say, that I did know Hugh Grant, and there's a great number of contributions that the people that got the city done. I know we're building a couple of tracks, and there seems to be some interior streets that maybe we could look at. And my big idea would be maybe we'll have a community center in the future, and maybe a new library with rooms that could take on names. But I know from my husband's family, he has a cousin that gave his life in Vietnam. So when we see John Juarez Street, it's really a sense of pride, and we always point out to the kids, this is your cousin. And so I think, the streets would also keep that name, in our hearts. So that'd be something I'd like to possibly see looked at. Thank you.
So I will come back to motion made by Councilmember Hussey was to accept the recommendations of the Facility Naming Committee to rename Pico Park to Veterans Freedom Park. And are you also asking that we direct staff to have MIG recommend enhancements to the park that will embrace veterans theme and return to council before the second meeting in May to approve implementation plan for the park?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, and that's what I am seconding, so that is what we are voting on. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNutt voted aye.
Thank you all for your input. I know the Veterans Wall of Freedom Committee still has a whole lot of work to do, so we appreciate that you came out tonight, and I think they'd appreciate your support as they work to finish that facility out in the new park to be named soon. We will move on to item number 7, and that is adopt an ordinance to modify section 2.24.08 entitled Abolishment of Postings and section 2.08080 of the Municipal Code entitled Appointment, Removal, Demotion, Promotion of Employee. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor. All department directors in the city of Grand Terrace are at-will employees based on the council enactment of ordinance number 281 on April 28, 2015. But prior to that, department heads were classified employees. And what's the difference? At-will employees serve at the pleasure of the appointing authority, while classified employees' employment is governed by the city's personnel rules and procedures. The city has several department heads that were hired before ordinance number 281 was approved, and the positions are the city clerk, the child care center director, and the community development director. What you have before you today, it will allow that any of those positions that are revert to a at-will position, it would provide for those employees to receive 3 months severance pay if they are released from city employment without cause. Without cause means the city and the employee are deciding to separate without any particular fault. In addition to that, there's language in section 2.08.080 for any future employees where the city manager would be able to offer a separation agreement of up to 3 months, and then he or she would have to report that to the council for financial reasons. And so the reason why this becomes an important issue is recently the city council eliminated the community development department, splitting it into 2 departments, one being planning and land use services and the other being public works department. We currently have a director who is the community development director. She may decide to accept the position as planning development services director, but in doing so, her appointment letter would include the opportunity for her to receive 3 months severance pay if she were to be released for without cause. So it's just this is a tweaking of our existing municipal code to allow for those changes to occur.
Okay. Thank you. Does council have any questions of staff? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, and I apologize for not, bringing this up with you. The other thing is, when we went to League of Cities, it says the only employee that reports directly to the council is the city clerk. So, but I also feel that the city manager has to have control of staff. So how do we adjust this? And the other concern I don't have a concern personally with you, but say there's a future situation where, say, a city clerk is providing much needed documentation to the public, and the city manager doesn't like it, and he exercises his authority to get rid of the person that's providing all this great, Freedom of Information Act. So I just kind of would like to see some deliberation on that aspect, kind of protect both interests.
Okay, and I think that would be something that the city attorney would probably need to look at. The resolution that I would have would be that if the city manager isn't carrying out his duties in the appropriate manner, then that's the individual you should be taking care of. As the chief executive officer for the city, part of the tenets that we have as city managers ensure that we operate within a certain manner, and certainly transparency and not trying to cut off the avenue for information to the public. That's a serious issue. The city manager does that, and you should address that immediately. And so I'm hoping that you won't have that issue as long as I'm sitting here, but certainly I can understand that would be a concern.
I don't know what the other, I would just think, because since that was brought up at the League of Cities, then how do other cities handle this?
Yeah.
Mr. City Attorney?
Obviously, if you mean with the city clerk, generally the parties that work directly for the council are the city manager, city attorney, and the city clerk, and possibly city treasurer. But there's some cities that have them elected, so they're actually beholden to the people. As a general law city, you have the power, and I haven't ever looked up the city clerk, but I can look it up in our code, see what it says, but you have the ability to make that position answerable to the council if you want. In other words, a direct report like the city manager and myself.
All right, is that an action that we can take later? Does that affect the item that is before us at this point?
No, it's actually not relevant to the item before you.
Okay, so it was just making sure that you have an understanding of where we're going with city clerk, and that might be something we bring back and address at another time. Okay, any other questions of staff at this time? Are there any requests to speak forms? All right, so is there anybody that would like to speak on this item? Seeing no takers, will, oh, I see a hand. Please come forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Nina Mohammed, and I'm a resident here in Grand Terrace for the past 6 years. The city attorney had mentioned that this discussion about department heads does not include the city clerk.
It does include the city clerk.
Oh, but he was saying that that by going with the recommendation right now,
It wouldn't change the status of the city clerk as the city clerk does not currently directly report to the council.
it wouldn't, you said?
No, that wouldn't change that reporting structure at this time. And if it was something that council wanted to review, it could come back to us to look at the reporting structure.
Okay, because I was just going off of Councilmember Robles' concern, and I was like, that's a good point. So I was just wondering how that worked.
Right, she was raising the issue as to the direct reporting nature of the city clerk, and at this time, the city clerk does not, and that's something that we, as a council, could look at it at another time.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you for your
I just wanted
comments.
to understand. Thank you.
That's okay. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, hearing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd move for approval as presented.
I will second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Madam Mayor, we sped along a little quick, and I'm sorry I blinked, but we should probably have the reading of the ordinance.
Oh, okay. Madam City Clerk, will you read that ordinance, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, County of San Bernardino, State of California, amending Section 2.08.080, appointment, renewal, demotion, promotion of employees of Chapter 2.08 and Section 2.24.08, abolish of positions of Chapter 2.24 of Title II of Grand Terrace Municipal Code by providing severance pay of up to 3 months for certain at-will under certain circumstances.
Okay, thank you. So before we move into new business, we'll take a 7-minute break.
Halloween, but technically it was superhero day. I just have not been in the mood.
We had this guy that does all the ones for the correction officers.
But see, the medical isn't reflecting income.
We will be returning from our recess. Okay, we'll return from our recess and we will address new business. Item 8, the I-215 Barton Road Interchange Project Update and request for council direction on project enhancements. May we please have a staff report? Oops, I called to order without Director Molina, but it seems as though we have somebody willing to talk us through this. Please remind us of your name.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager Duffy. My name is Theron Roshan. I'm a civil engineer with Interwest Consulting, and for the past 5 months I've been under contract with the city to represent them in the project development team that is comprised of Sandbag and Caltrans for the design and development of this project. I was asked to come forward this evening to give you an update on some of the issues that we've been grappling with and with some resolutions. But the fun part of this is we need you folks to make some choices on some project enhancements so that Caltrans can proceed with the final design. A little bit about the schedule. In a month, we're going to be at 95% design. The right-of-way acquisitions are underway and business relocations. And as the mayor mentioned at Sandbag, there have been some resolutions of necessity processed to them. And as you mentioned, this just starts a clock. Negotiation continues while that's underway. Advertising the project cannot happen until all of the right-of-way has been acquired. And so right-of-way is on the critical path for the schedule. Presently advertised in the summer of 2017, say early summer, late summer construction start, and 2 years of construction is what's projected. Also at Sandbag, kind of relating to funding, is as the mayor mentioned as well, the California Transportation Commission has reduced some of the STIP funds that were on this project, and Sandbag is working hard to reapply more stable federal funding into the project. And I think that we've been tracking that as well, and all optimism is that this will be a fully funded project, no issues associated with that. So some resolved issues. Because of the drought, the governor has a decree right now about no landscaping be included in the projects. And frankly, from an efficiency point of view, landscape requires an establishment period, sometimes a year. And the idea is you don't want to hold up the bonds that the contractors have to put up while that 1 year, after he or she's left the job, and have that planned establishment period. So what the plan is Caltrans will prepare a highway planting and irrigation plan. The landscaping will not go in with the interchange. And then as soon as the construction contractor is off the job, then they will bid a separate project that will install the irrigation and landscaping. And hopefully at that time, the drought situation will be over. We have been working with Sandbag to get some sort of entry statement at on the structure and near the structure, because this is, after all, the front door to the city of Grand Terrace. And so tonight we're going to show you some of the, shall we say, compromises that we've come up with. It was a struggle in terms of funding and things of that nature. Also, decorative lighting. I was back before your council recently about decorative lighting, and so we have some options for you on that as well. Also include the project is going to be the use of rubberized asphalt pavement, which uses recycled tires and helps the pavement last longer, and also uses the recycled tires. Noise reduction is a big part of that as well from traffic. We were working with them to perhaps include cooperatively the overlay of Barton Road up to Canal Street. The idea was that with this large interchange project, including that city-funded local overlay, we'd get the economy of scale associated with that. Caltrans has reviewed that and said that they would risk reopening the environmental document, and project momentum is a very big deal, and they didn't want to run that risk. So what the plan at this point is that as soon as the construction contractor for the interchange has been awarded, then the city can bid the overlay, and likely that awarded contractor for the interchange will sharpen their pencil and give us a good bid on that one. So as I mentioned, the right-of-way acquisitions are underway. There has been discussions about undergrounding the utilities on Barton Road. This is Southern California Edison lines and then the other joint utilities that are with them. This would be from the southbound off-ramp to Michigan. And we looked into using the city's Rule 20A money that Edison holds for the city. And the word came back that it wasn't eligible. So in discussions with Sandbag staff, we don't have a final official word, but they've agreed that that's part of the project cost. And a big leverage in that was that the city has some undergrounding ordinances presently. And the key question is, if the city were doing if that gas stations there were redeveloping, do you have the authority to require the undergrounding? The answer is yes. So therefore, Sandbag, at least at the staff level, has agreed to that. We'll get an official response on that as well. Some other activities, because the city's sewer is operated through an agreement with the city of Colton, they are verifying the locations of those and will be taking the lead for the relocation of some of that sewer lines. So we will be coming back to your council with a cooperative agreement. It'll be a joint agreement between Colton, Grand Terrace, and Sandbag. And then finally, another action that will be coming before your council is what's called the freeway maintenance agreement. And that, after the interchange is constructed, it defines who maintains what and whose responsibilities are. So that'll be coming back to your council as well. So the choices we have for you tonight, and I'm going to go through some examples of each and one of these. The first one is the decorative bridge fencing and a city logo that would go on that fence. So we have the material of the logo and the location of the logo on the bridge structure. And then within the roundabout itself, there's some vertical elements. You've seen some conceptual designs, but we have some refinements that Caltrans has developed, and we want to get your approval on those. And then finally, the decorative street lights and what styles and colors, pole material, things of that nature. So going into it, the first item is the logo itself. So we used the Grand Terrace logo. Caltrans developed these mock-ups. And so the first option is here, where you have the G and then the mountains, and then kind of setting the mountains off is a metal steel. It's just like a stainless steel that has little holes in it. So it'll give you that relief that the mountains are there. So that's in that area. This one would be made of a Corten steel. And here's an example where you have that kind of oxidized metal, kind of a rusty look to it. And it would be open with the grate of the fence. And I'll show you the options for locations in a minute. Staff is currently recommending the perforated stainless steel. All of our recommendations are based on ease of maintenance primarily. So that's the first item for you to... Now you can do these all at the end, or if you'd like to discuss as we go through each one.
Go ahead and go through them all.
Okay, very well. The next would be the location of whatever logo you choose. This first option has on the fence material, this is a black fencing that has vinyl covering with arches in it. And if you can't really make it out, but there'll be the Blue Mountain embossed in the concrete girder all the way across the structure. The idea is that once we're off the structure, we would put that mountain theme in the top rail of that fence, and then put that logo in there. This logo would go on both sides of the fence, so that the freeway traffic would see it as well as the local traffic and pedestrians that are walking there. But the idea with this is that you bring that mountain theme more vertical and folks can see it. The next option is to move it onto the structure so the view shed is more for the freeway traffic. Again, that entry statement for the city. So that's the second option is, if I'm going back here, the mountain off the rail or off the fencing, and then more with the view shed on the structure itself. So we're recommending concept 1 with the mountain top rail. In the roundabout itself, this is the concept that you had before your board back in 2014. And if you'll notice in the center here, there was this vertical element. Actually, roundabouts need some sort of vertical element in it to block the traffic. In a roundabout, the entering vehicle needs to kind of have some obstruction so they know to safely negotiate around it and it's not a through. So what Caltrans has done is within that center island, they've come up with some concepts. One includes 3 separate raised elements so that anyone going around, no matter what way you're coming, you'll have something. So we're calling this the 3 mountain sculptures for a 360-degree view. The second concept we'll show you just has a single one, rather prominent, right in the center. We would imagine that would most likely be facing Barton Road as you enter the roundabout. So we have these 2 concepts, the three elements in a 360 view or the single element. So what are those elements? So this is for the concept 1, the 360 view, and basically they're 2 mountains in miniature. Oops, I beg your pardon. Here and here. Here you can see a cross-section of those. So the littler mountains are here, the bigger ones are there. And you would see it from both sides. And your choices are the material as well. So there's the slate, and they would try to pick a blue slate, something that would be there. You could have a coppered patina that would kind of weather and age over time, or a rusted steel or a Corten steel. So those are in fact, this applies to the other one I'm going to show you as well, these same materials. Now this is for concept 2, where you just have one prominent, so you'd still have those small mountains made of the various materials, but on the back side of it would be a concrete archway, high polish, and there'd be lighting that would come up from behind it, so kind of giving that sunrise over the mountain or the sunset over the mountain look. And again, you'd have those 3 choices of the material for the mountains. So staff is recommending the 360 view so that at any direction you enter the roundabout, you'll have something that would be prominent. And we're also recommending the slate, and that's mainly from a graffiti maintenance point of view. You can imagine a patina copper or a steel trying to sandblast that or do something with it. At least with the slate, you sandblast that off and there's still that strata underneath it. So those are our recommendations.
Is there lighting associated with this one as well?
There is not lighting associated with the 3 locations.
What does the roundabout look like at night so that people can have a view for it being there?
Yeah, there will be street lighting for the roadway that would also illuminate the roundabout center island.
Okay.
So it'll be well illuminated.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then our last options are with the decorative street lights. Now these are not required. These lights are not required for roadway lighting or anything else, but it's a pedestrian scale lighting for folks that are going across here. So we have some options. What we're calling the acorn light, and you have a single globe or a double globe, and then here's a picture of an example of kind of what that would look like. So you can see the normal street lights over here, pretty tall. This is a pedestrian scale lighting. The next option is what we'll call a double globe carriage light. and it has a more heritage look to it, a little more, although you can get a little more modern. But I guess the difference between that and the Acorn is that there is some steel around the outside of it. There's a top to it. But Caltrans needs some direction on that. So you have single or double globed carriage look. And what we're recommending is the double globe carriage, and it's kind of mirroring what you have at some of the transit stops within the city as well. Now keep in mind, the street light that is selected could be used in the future within the city as kind of the standard for pedestrian lighting, or it could be also for street lighting as well. So keep that in the back of your mind. Also, you have some choices on the types of poles that they can place. As I was driving in on Barton, I noticed you have concrete poles now, but metal poles are also available. With the metal pole, that's the staff recommendation, is you have, again, from the maintenance point of view, if it's less expensive, if there's a knockdown because of a vehicle accident, a little cheaper to replace it. Also, painting of the poles can happen in a routine fashion. And I think you also have some opportunity to do some other unique things, although concrete poles are kind of more traditional as well. So, but staff is recommending the metal poles. And then you have choices with color. Lots of choices tonight. What Caltrans kind of said, well, black is kind of a standard, accent pole. You have the blue poles, and then the green is what staff's recommending, because that's what your existing pedestrian transit stops are. You have green poles. But again, that's up to council direction. So that is our recommendation to you, and any feedback or questions, be happy to answer.
In choosing the color, if council went with the steel, would they be able to be painted another color if the decision to have a different color came up in the future?
Absolutely. But I won't sugarcoat it. You would have to do some stripping of the paint off, and then primer coat, and then put it back on again, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Councilmember Hussey.
Yeah, this isn't about color or the poles or anything like that. I'm just concerned about, you said pedestrian lighting. We're going to have a sidewalk for the bridge because we have a lot of residents live on the other side of Grand Terrace and they walk to Stater Brothers. I just want to make sure safely you can do that.
Indeed, on both sides too. Presently, you just have it on one side.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wilson.
I want to back up to a couple of items that you talked about. Have there been any real objections to force any condemnation procedures that'll influence the schedule of this construction?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know if Sandra, have you heard anything else?
No. As indicated by the mayor earlier, the resolutions of necessity that are before Sandbag, there's the ability to negotiate all the way up until the end on that before actual condemnation.
And you also talked about the rubberized AC. I know that usually the plants have to shut their plant down and then start up a batch for rubberized AC. So was that considered on the timing in relation to that shutdown? Because it can't always happen, especially in the middle of the summer.
You are correct, but with this large interchange project, the hot plants tend to follow what the market is, and it'll be a large quantity, and there's lots of competition in the region, so I don't see that as a limiting factor at all.
And my last question centers around the decorative street lighting itself. The globe style, kind of ancient American, or what do we want? Anyway, number 3. Are we concerned about the possibility that it's going to attract a lot of vandalism?
Yeah, we discussed that. One of the keys is to have it high enough up so that it's not an attraction for that. They design these so that they have shatter-resistant plastic or heavy glass. It's a concern, definitely. So the higher the better with the poles is one of the things that we discussed with Caltrans.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time. Are there any requests to speak forms? No requests to speak forms. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Please come forward and state your name.
My name is Nina Mohammed again tonight. Following off of Councilmember Hussey's question about sidewalks, and we did get an answer for that. Are bike lanes included in the design? And this question would be for staff. So.
All right, thank you. We'll redirect to staff. Are bike lanes included in this design?
Presently on Barton Road, there are no designated bike lanes. There's a wider shoulder. And so building off of that, there's no striped signed bike lanes in the project. However, there's pavement width on the structure so that if the city were to have a designated bike, they could stripe that and implement it.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. I'll bring it back to council for consideration of direction to staff. No. Well, it depends. If somebody just wants to take staff recommendation, we could do it all at once. Do you have something other than staff recommendation that you'd like to say? Well, that depends on whether we're taking them one at a time or not.
I was going to say I like staff recommendation on all the matters, so I would move to direct staff to forward the selections to Sandbag based on the recommendations brought forward by the consultant today.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. There's a motion for staff recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Any further discussion at this time? If not, please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNable voted aye.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 9, which is the approval of a bus driver classification and salary. May we have staff report, please?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Adrienne Freeman for the record. This staff report supports goal number 4 of our vision statement, develop and implement successful partnerships by working with a regional agency to secure funding for programs and projects that benefit seniors in our community. On January 12, 2016, the City Council approved a funding agreement and lease agreement between the City of Grand Terrace and Valley Transportation Services, known as VTrans, for the implementation of a senior bus program. This item is for City Council approval of a bus driver classification and position. The city has secured match funding from VTrans to assist with the operation of the proposed program, including covering the bus driver's annual salary for the next 3 years. At this time, staff is recommending that council take actions 1 through 5 as identified in the agenda report. Staff is happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Does council have any questions of staff? Okay. Any requests to speak forms on this item? Okay, anyone wish to speak on this item? All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of motion.
Oops, sorry, a little premature. Mayor, I'd move for approval of bus driver job classification, adopt a resolution of the City Council amending the adopted annual budget for fiscal year 2015-16, include the new bus driver position, adopt the resolution of the City Council amending resolutions 2015-21, 2016-3, adding a new classification / salary range for the position of bus driver, approve the establishment of the Senior Bus Program Fund, Fund 65, to account for the expenses and reimbursement of the VTrans match the Senior Bus Program, and finally appropriate $5,000 from the Air Quality Improvement Fund to cover 1/3 of the city's match requirement with VTrans for the Senior Bus Program.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
All right, thank you. We'll move to item 10, which is discussion of Van Buren Street roadway alterations and consider possible action and appropriation. May we please have a staff report?
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Again, my name is Sandra Molina, Community Development Director. This item is a follow-up to a discussion the council had back in November with respect to community concerns relating to vehicle travel on Palm Avenue and Van Buren. At that time, we did provide some recommendations for Palm Avenue, which we are moving forward on. But this item tonight is to discuss Van Buren and how we would potentially address issues of vehicle speeds, and also with respect to the stop intersection at Van Buren and Oriole, how to better address that. So what's indicated in the staff report, this presentation was also printed out for the council because sometimes it is difficult to see smaller print. But what staff is proposing is to consider street alterations in a phased approach, and what that would do, here. So what we would do is we would do these alterations either in phases or sub-phases, and after each phase or sub-phase, staff would review the effectiveness of those alterations, and if it's effective, then we would stop. We would not have to implement further phases, but if it warrants some more implementation, then we would look at the next phase after that. And so what I'll do is I'll go over those phases. The staff report had the attachments of the different phases. What staff has done, and it was kind of small, so what staff has done is for each of those phases discussed in the staff report, I also did an aerial, and that aerial lines up with that particular proposed improvement. So for instance, this is phase 1A, and what this proposes is, here's the intersection of Van Buren and Oriole. There is a grade difference when you're coming westbound, and sometimes that provides difficulty for motorists to see that there's a stop sign here. So what we're proposing with phase A is to put a flashing stop ahead sign, solar powered, one approximately here, the other one here for westbound traffic. Now, this is what was given as part of the staff report. Here's the intersection. These squares with the cross marks in them, those are driveway approaches. So you would see this driveway approach and this driveway approach. And then over here, these smaller ones are these approaches here. And then this is the curb ramps at the corners that you would see there. So that's phase 1A, and we would propose to implement that and to see if that helps with the issue of motorists not seeing that there's a stop ahead. So this would flash and alert motorists of the upcoming intersection. The other aspect of phase 1A, and this is to address the speeds that come from south on Observation and then turn east or westbound onto Van Buren. What we would propose here is striping, a striped median, and then also we would at this curve that's pretty significant, we would propose again striping along here and some what's called bot dots, and these are bot dots. So what happens here is as the median is better defined and the travelway width is reduced, that forces the motorist to see the narrow travelway, and it also results in reduced speeds. And so for phase 1A, we would propose to implement these improvements. So phase 1B, then, the next step to that, after we review the effectiveness, would be to, wrong button. So we would propose here to do some pavement markings, again with the intent of reducing the travel way. What happens here is there would be a double line median. This is the detail, and there would be, again, those bot dots. So this would identify the center of the travel way. And then there would be, on the ends, another stripe that would be set from the curb, and again, that reduces the travel way. This is an aerial I found out in Redlands, but what this is exactly what we're proposing. It has the center lane, and then you provide these edge of pavement striping, and that, again, essentially reduces the travel way and causes motorists to slow down. So that would be Phase 1B that we would implement after Phase 1A. Then and Phase 2 is somewhat of a menu option. Phase 2 has 3 different components to it, but we could pick and choose which would be the most effective component after implementing Phase 1 and Phase 1A and Phase 1B. So one potential option from the menu is to put these mid-block islands. And one is proposed east of Oriole, and this is, I think this might be, I'm not sure if that's Oriole or Nightingale, but this is, one would be east of Oriole, one would be east of Nightingale. And so there would be approximately 4 feet by 2 foot median in the center. This diamond here is bot dots to identify and protect the center median, and also to direct motorists away from the median. There would also be signs about the road being narrowed, and then also about alerting motorists to the median in the middle here. Again, this aerial photograph lines up with this exhibit. The other item off the menu for Phase 2 would be mid-block medians. And so these are small medians that would come away from the curb. They're small, they're about 4 feet wide, 1 foot in width. But with the signage that would go with these medians would be these, just a sign that alerts motorists to the hazard of a median in the street. And then the other option under the menu option for Phase 2 with respect to Observation Street would be after the striping is done, and that needs to have a higher level of effectiveness to help slow down traffic, then there would actually be a raised median along the center at the curb. And then there would be these the signage. This exact signage is what would go on either end. So that would be, again, the third component of Phase 2. And again, Phase 2 can be any one of these or just one of them. And so that's what we're proposing to implement as far as a staged or sub-phased approach. I did want to make one correction if I can. I just noticed this right now, is that in the staff report you'll see that Phase 1A includes the flashing signal lights, and then also the striping center line. And the cost for Phase 1A for the flashing lights is $8,960. And then Observation Street in Van Buren, it's $7,700 to do the striping of the center line over off of Observation and Van Buren. But I incorrectly put the cost under the fiscal impact of $8,960. It actually should be the $8,960 plus the $7,700. So I'm going to ask the council, when they make their recommendation, if they choose to move forward with staff's recommendation, to increase that cost accordingly. This would conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to respond to questions the council may have.
Thank you, Director Molina. Does council have any questions of staff? Councilmember Hussey.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. So all these designs were recommended by the expert?
Yes, sir. They were recommended by our traffic engineer, TEP Engineering, Craig Newstetter.
Okay. I know a lot of the residents are still, they like the speed bump idea. I don't know what the expert thinks about that. Or have we ever thought about, I don't know if you've been on roads where the dip in the road, when the water is deflected into the the storm drains? I mean, was that ever an idea too, instead of narrowing the street? Because I know that street's a flood control street. We have like the Colorado River when we ever do get the El Nino comes through on there. But was that ever a thought process with the speed bumps or anything like that?
Speed bumps are generally not the preferred alternative. They don't, traffic slows down to go over the speed bump, but then they tend to speed to make up that time. It's also not preferred typically for law enforcement and fire personnel to get the vehicles going through the street and having to deal with the speed bumps. We can also ask our traffic engineer for some input on that, but that's generally not preferred.
Well, and that's one of our main concerns is to slow them down before they hit that stop sign, before they run into another house. And, if we don't have speed bumps all the way up and down the street, I understand for law enforcement, but, our main concern is to make sure people stop and, go the speed limit. And that might be an easier fix, the least expensive, and it's going to save lives.
Mr. Newstetter, is there a reason that you did not consider speed bumps on this particular issue?
Yes. My name is Craig Newstetter. I'm the traffic engineering consultant working with the city. Madam Mayor, members of council, actually we looked at the concept of a speed hump or several speed humps on this street several years ago. The problem is that the grade is too steep. We have the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is really the primary source of information that I work with in terms of design standards for these type of traffic control devices. They do have a manual, recommended guidelines on the installation of speed humps. And the reason why we didn't recommend them previously and we're not recommending them now is that the grade of the street is simply too steep. It's in conflict with the design standards put forward by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. So that's basically the reason.
So the purpose of the recommendations that you're making in this report, what generally is the purpose of all of these items that you're recommending to us tonight? What will we get if we implement any of these items?
All right. From a speed perspective, there's several problems with the street. The street's very broad, it's straight, and it's very steep, okay? All of these are features that facilitate a higher rate of speed. So we can't do anything about the grade of the street, but we are trying to deal with the broadness of the street by narrowing the travel way. It's an established fact that with a narrower travel way, traffic will have to slow down. So you can see every one of these features that we're proposing will narrow the travel way. Also, with the construction of the medians at strategic locations and curb extensions, we're actually introducing a very mild form of diversion of traffic. The traffic, actually, you're going to have to, as a vehicle, progresses east to west, west to east, when all these features are in place, the driver is going to have to be much more keenly attuned to driving. It's not going to be a straightaway anymore. Actually, he's going to have to shift 1 or 2 feet just maneuver up and down the street. And all these features are included, and they're designed to make the driver aware of what they're doing, to progress on that street in a more cautious manner, and to do that in a safe manner. So it's a very problematic situation. Frankly, the speed humps would be the cheapest solution. They would be cheaper, but we cannot recommend them because there are guidelines, standards, and the grade of the street precludes us from making that recommendation. So we've come up with a package of improvements that the primary intent is to narrow the travel way, to cause the driver to be more keenly aware of what they're doing as they're negotiating the street, and we have this deflection feature that causes the driver to be more cautious as they proceed. And I think on top of that, they don't detract from the overall appearance of the street. It's still going to look like a very residential street that people will be comfortable with.
Thank you. Councilmember Hussey, did you have more questions? Okay. Any other questions of staff? Councilmember Mitchell.
Sir, can you speak to the success of other like areas that benefited from the bot dots? Conceptually in my mind, I'm still having a hard time. If traffic is heading south on observation,
yes,
by the time that they get down to the corner that is our concern corner, they will have come a quarter of a mile. I don't understand how it's going to slow them down.
Well, they're going to have to be more keenly aware that if they're going to be within if they're going to track within the striped travel way, they're going to have to be more keenly aware of what they're doing. Right now, with what we have right now is this broad apron at the intersection, which actually facilitates the drivers from making the turn at a greater speed. And by narrowing the travel way, channelizing the travel way, the drivers are going to have to be more conscious of making that maneuver. We're going to initially try to accomplish that at with the less expensive modifications, including striping and the bot dots. We'll measure how successful that is. If further work is needed, then we would be installing a raised median with signage, which would make the driver acutely aware that they're going to have to make an accommodation to negotiate that knuckle.
I appreciate what you're saying, but again, I think the drivers are keenly aware that there is a stop sign and they're continuing to run it. So my thought here is once they learn to navigate that and work their way around it, after traveling that path 8-10 times a day like most of us do to get in and out of the city and run our errands, I think they're going to be well aware, and they're going to continue to figure out how to still speed around that corner or rebuild their speed by the time they get a quarter mile down.
Well, I can assure you that with the recommended ultimate improvements, they will actually have to slow down, significantly slow down, to negotiate the knuckle. Okay, and then subsequent, if you're talking about further, we're talking west of the knuckle, then we're going to have the features. Well, at some point in time, we're going to have the striping, the median striping, the edge of travelway striping. If that isn't effective, then we'll have the median islands and we'll have the curb extensions. with the whole program in place, then we'll certainly have traffic significantly slowed on the street.
I don't have any vast knowledge, I'm not an engineer, but I'm just thinking to myself, at that four-way stop, could you put a series of dots to slow the traffic down? Coming, I don't know, like increments of like 200 feet, so the car rattles and maybe not hops over speed bumps, but making them more aware of that.
That's not recommended for several reasons. First of all, it's called a rumble strip, and you know, perhaps 20, 30 years ago, you would find rumble strips even on major arterials with the intent of slowing traffic. Two major problems with well, there's several problems with rumble strips. First of all, they tend not to be permanent. You know, as traffic, over time, they deteriorate and you lose the bot dots. One other problem is that vehicles that go over the rumble strips, they tend to create noise. And so it's certainly not recommended to put a rumble strip in a residential neighborhood because they create noise and the people adjacent to the rumble strip will object. And thirdly, and probably most important, is that the rumble strip is a safety detriment for bicyclists. And of course, we have to accommodate bicyclists and motorcyclists. And so, of course, we have to accommodate all vehicles on the streets. And so, a rumble strip is not recommended.
I thank you. That makes perfect sense.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I think the guiding factor here is that we have to recognize that we hire professional people with that bring with us a great deal of experience and regulations. I think the phrasing will be good. It'll give us an idea of how much we need to increase this. But what I do want to guard against is where we have a council trying to second guess our professional staff on something as critical as engineering the roads and how the traffic goes through. So I'm comfortable with the recommendation and moving with phase one.
Thank you. Any more comments before I go to public comment? Councilmember Hussey.
Yeah, just, I know the idea is to slow traffic down. Did the expert think about making a Crane Street a four-way stop also to help slow traffic down on there? Or is it because of the hill? I mean, we've thought about that. That was on page 193.
Right. We have a set of guidelines that are recognized nationally called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. There is a California version. The manual is quite clear that stop signs are not to be used as devices to slow traffic. There are legitimate criteria for the use of stop signs, but the manual specifically excludes the use of the stop signs solely for the purpose of slowing traffic.
So, I'm a little confused there. I know you're the expert, but you know, just when people turn around that corner, you know, being a resident and going for walks around there all the time, when you do you try to cross that street and people fly around that corner, as a pedestrian, you know, it'd be nice to have a stop sign there. Yes, for safety. But, you know,
yeah, Sandra just mentioned that we can do a warrant study for the intersection and determine if any of the other criteria for stop signs are met, and then pursue it from that standpoint.
Okay, I was just thinking, you know, would that help? So
it may help, yeah. If that's the desire of the city, we can investigate, do a warrant study to determine if stop signs are appropriate for that location.
Thank you.
All right, so we will open public comment. I have one request to speak form for John Van Kampen.
Good evening. Thank you. City Council, Madam Mayor, consulting parties. I had a question before I had any comments. I can see how a stop sign or four-way at Crane would be detrimental or wouldn't be productive. What about right at Nightingale? Because as you come down Oreo coming north-south, there's stop signs every little street, like Robin, Raven, etc. So if you had one at Nightingale right before Oreo, that's a, yes, it will slow traffic down, but it's a safety feature because people don't always stop crossing Nightingale to get onto or through Van Buren.
Mr. Van Kampen, this is public comment, and I understand you want to engage with the consultant, and if you would...
It's a question, though.
I know. I'll redirect the question if you would. So the question's out there, and then if you'll make your further comments, and then I will...
Okay,
I
yeah.
promise I will ask that question.
Fine.
Thank you.
As an employee of government for decades and speaking to government, what would the time frame be to get this stuff rolling so it's in place? I don't expect a precise answer, but that is my comment. I appreciate you looked into it.
Okay.
Implementation then becomes critical.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else that wishes to speak during this public comment? Okay. I have one more request to speak. I apologize, and we'll get you after that. So Cassandra Ariano, please come forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple comments and concerns regarding this issue. I've been up here a few times regarding it. Just one, I haven't heard regarding this issue, reducing the speed limit on the street. It is currently 30, reducing it to 25. That is, I've seen on a couple of the other residential streets in the area. Maybe that could be brought up when we are trying to solve this issue. Just maybe posting that, maybe people will see that and reduce their speed on the street as well. Two, I know the concern was brought up that speed humps weren't a good solution for our street regarding the grade of the street. However, I know that they did install them on DeBerry. Why was it a good solution for that street and not ours? Maybe we can find that out for us and bring that answer to us. I am curious why it was okay for them and not us, because that's kind of the reason we brought that solution to you. Three, I am curious to see the actual research findings that the expert found when they came out. To be quite honest, since November meeting when they said they would be out there, I did not see anyone. Spoken to a few of my neighbors who did not see anyone out there either. So I'd actually like to see that research that they found. Four, a lot of these solutions that are being brought to us are solving the, forgive me if I'm gonna say the wrong direction, westbound going down the hill. I'd like to see something solving the eastbound traffic, because they do gain that speed trying to get up the hill. So maybe something that solves them going eastbound as well. And that's it. I'd like to see those four things.
Okay. Thank you. And we had another member that would like to speak. If you would, when you come forward, I know you spoke before, but if you would, please state your name again.
My name's Rodney Spencer. I live on Kentville and Oreo. It's 1 block over from this problem area. Lately, we've been having a lot of speeders on our street now because the sheriff has been on Van Buren watching for speeders now. So they're getting smart. They're going around, like you said, on some of the other streets. And I actually stood on the sidewalk one day about a couple weeks ago and watched somebody come up the street about 50 miles an hour on 25-mile-an-hour street. And they just looked at me like I was crazy. But I am a professional driver is what I do. There are streets in Ontario that I go to that have mediums in them, and it slows traffic down. They go around, it's pretty much what they do on that street to slow down traffic. This part on Observation out there, that's a big safety thing out there. Those people cut that corner so fast going up that street, coming one way and the other way, both ways they cut that corner. And it only takes one car to do that with somebody else coming the other way, or walkers either way. I've noticed as a professional driver of the big little things that they put on the ground to slow down traffic. The dots. but the bigger ones. I don't know how safe that is, but they keep me aware of what's going on those dots. I don't know how long they last or anything else like that. I do know on Van Buren, that's a big thing. When I first moved in the neighborhood 20 years ago, they had bigger signs showing stop, you know. Now they got overgrowth, trees, everything else going on in the area, so a lot of people just don't pay attention no more, and they just keep going. They don't care anymore. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. All right. Anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
I seem to be coming here a lot today. My name is Nina Mohammed in regards to the recommendations that's being made to staff, made by staff. I know that the question of speed bumps have come up, and living on DeBerry and Blue Loop Pine Circle and having speed bumps within our community, what often happens is you hear them, even though it's a 5 miles an hour within our community, you hear them zooming by 25 or more, even within our community, slowing down just enough for the speed bumps, and then zooming on throughout the community. So it's always an issue of like visibility. Our Blue Loop Pine Circle was, the code enforcement came in once and they red curved everything, because we didn't have enough width to meet that. And so that opened up the space for more speeding to happen. But when we used to have the cars kind of blocking the way and narrowing our path, nobody went over 5 miles an hour. So that's just an example of like how these recommendations really do work. When you narrow the road, people pay attention to what is in front of them. It's also a part of the Federal Highway Administration recommendations. An example of that, which would include like alternative modes of transportation such as walking and biking, would be road diets, adding like sidewalks and whatnot to these features, which help like really reduce traffic. And more on what the gentleman was saying, I agree with what he was saying. If you added the delineators, that's what they're called, the higher ones, in the center to kind of be an obstacle that people have to now like really focus and not, you can't zoom past those. I don't care how skilled you are. You're either going to run into it or you're going to, you know, slow down so you're not running into it. So something to consider.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else that would like to speak on this item? Okay. Seeing no takers, I will close public comment and come back. And I'm going to ask staff some of the questions that came up, if they would address them, please. One of them is, do we have a timeline for implementation of any of these items?
We would, with Phase 1A, we would implement that as quickly as we can. We would, the quickest way would be to speak to our on-call, our paving contractor. The other way is to also go out to bid for it. So we would determine which is the best method to address it.
Okay, so weeks, months?
Probably, I'd say roughly about 8 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks.
For the first phase?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes. As far as some of the other questions that were raised, they probably come from, probably answers for the engineer, I would imagine. And one of them, or actually, it's staff as well. If we have speed bumps on DeBerry, why are they not being recommended for this particular street?
You know, Mayor, I don't have the background for DeBerry. But before the Mr. Newstetter comes up and answers that question, I would like, if the council would allow, just to go back to this discussion when it first started. There are speeding concerns, but you have to, just to remind the council, Mr. Newstetter prepared a speed profile study and determined that for the most part, 85%, the 85th percentile of all the traffic that was studied over a 24-hour period is within the speed limit. And so there are different ideas and that folks may have with respect to how to slow down the traffic, but we're trying to manage the level of the alterations to the actual speeding concern. We don't have, 60% of motorists coming down that street speeding, so we're trying to address that 15% where they do have some excessive speeds. But I just wanted to kind of focus it into, what the issue is, what our study has determined the percentage of speeding, and trying to make sure that our response is proportional to what that concern is. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion. I'll have Mr. Newstead respond to DeBerry because it sounds like he has some history on that.
Thank you.
It's a school.
Yeah, actually, we studied both the DeBerry location and the Van Buren location. There is a difference in grade between the two locations, and we did meet the minimum or the maximum criteria for grade at the where the speed hump was installed on DeBerry. The grades that we're talking about on this section of Van Buren are steeper, somewhat steeper, and that's the reason. It was in fact with the DeBerry location, it was a very it's at the point in the grade of the road where it flattens out. Okay, it's immediately to the east of there. The grade does increase to comparable to the grade that we're talking about on Van Buren, but the location for the DeBerry speed hump meets the standard or the guidelines from the ITE.
Okay. And then the discussion was, there was a lot of focus on the eastbound traffic. Will these calming measures...
The speed profile that we did several weeks ago was for both eastbound and westbound. The woman that spoke, she's absolutely correct. The speeding is in both, the speeding problem that we encounter is in both directions. We have, the speed limit that we have posted right now is legal and enforceable. We could not arbitrarily reduce the speed limit at this time and still be able to say that. All right? But there are vehicles, what we observed were there are vehicles going as fast as 42 miles per hour, both in the eastbound and the westbound direction. So we do definitely want to target those vehicles, get the overall profile down for the street.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask if we can in some way have staff send a research report to Ms. Ariano on this item. Yes, Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. As Director Molina was speaking, I was thinking that speeding wasn't just the only concern that we had. It was the fact that there were vehicles running the stop sign, and it was regardless of the speed they were running the stop sign. Am I recalling that correctly?
Yes, you are. And so Phase 1A, that's why that includes the flashing stop ahead sign.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so I've closed public comment. We had some follow-up from staff. I'll bring it back to council for consideration of motion.
Make a motion for the recommendation, 1, to direct staff to implement the phasing plan beginning with Phase 1A, and 2, appropriate, we got to add money to this?
$16,600?
Yeah, $16,660.
Appropriate $16,600 from the gas tax fund.
I will second that with a comment that I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions and be educated on all of this and make a decision, not only that I feel it's best for the residents, but also with the input from our staff. So I will second that with those comments.
Okay, there's been a motion and second. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Thank you. And Director Molina, thank you for the enhanced images that you gave us on these. I know with the staff report, it was a little bit difficult to see exactly what was being examined, so thank you very much. We will move.
May I just add that we did follow the same process. We notified the neighborhood of this particular item was going to be on the agenda, so we did follow the same process of notifying the neighborhood, giving them an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. All right, item 11 is an ordinance amending Title IV of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code, establishing the Grand Terrace Circulation Improvement Fee Program. May we have staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As the council may recall, at the last meeting on January 26, staff provided a receive and file report on the Circulation Improvement Fee Program. And that's the program that assesses traffic-related impact fees on new development. And at that time, staff had indicated to the council that we would come back with an actual ordinance to establish the fees. And so that's what the purpose of this item is this evening, is to have that ordinance introduced by the City Council to make those fees effective on new development. During the discussion last time, we indicated that the fee is going to be less than what it was previously, and the reason for that is with our participation with Sandbag's Measure I program, their Nexus study, they are providing a partial funding, a substantial partial funding for these arterial improvements, and so that reduces our local cost. And utilizing their factor, that's the resulting, that's why the cost results in a lesser fee than that was previously considered. The other thing point that was noted for the council last time is that the fees that are established, again, do not pay for the whole cost of the improvements because we can only assess the proportional fare to new development, so they would not bear the full cost of the improvement. We did provide a public notice of the meeting, and it wasn't required to be a public hearing as indicated in the staff report because these fees are actually being reduced, they're not being increased. The staff report the study was included in the staff report, and stamp page 213 is a table that outlines the different categories of the arterial improvement fee, the operational improvement fee, and the traffic signal improvement fee, so that council can see what those new fees are proposed to be. And then the last few rows of that table shows cumulatively what the total fee is proposed to be and what it used to be. So you can see what that reduction is.
Now, we went through this already, right?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
Okay, because I would say let's just go ahead and move the recommendation, read the title.
Okay. And I have no request to speak for him, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Second, please.
All right. Motion and second. Madam City Clerk, would you please read the ordinance by title?
Yes, ma'am. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, California, amending Chapter 4.104 of Title IV of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code to clarify and to reduce the overall fees for the Circulation Improvement Fee Program.
Thank you. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Thank you. Okay, on to item 12. We have Child Care Services Financial Status Report. This is a receive and file. May we have staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Cynthia Fortune from the Finance Department. Tonight, we would like to provide City Council with a financial status on the Child Care Services Department, its fund, and its program. This staff report supports City Council goal number 1, ensuring our fiscal viability through the continuous monitoring of revenue receipts and expenditure disbursements against approved budget appropriations. So at this time, I'm going to transfer it to our Child Care Services Director, Linda Phillips, to start the presentation.
Tem, council members. As Ms. Cynthia said, my name is Linda Phillips. I'm the Director for the Child Care Services. The department mission, Child Care Services Department offers opportunity for each child development, physical, socially, cognitive, according to their individual learning style. The department's curriculum is planned to enhance, challenge distinct individual needs, interests, and abilities. The department's mission, activities, relationships occur in a healthy, positive, and relaxed environment in which well-qualified personnel provide individual attention, guidance, and nurturing to each child. The department goals are to provide affordable, convenient, dependable child care services, to create a child care setting for social, cognitive, and physical development, to provide a nurturing environment, to provide a learning experience for our children, to provide the programs that prepare children for a lifelong of learning. The department programs include an infant and toddler education for children 6 weeks to 2 years. The preschool is 2 years to 5 years of age, or the entrance of kindergarten. The before and after school program at Terrace View and Grand Terrace Elementary are for children 5 years to 12 years. The Tiny Tot program is right here at City Hall for children 3 years to 5 years of age. If you're not moving on.
If council will remember, in fiscal year 12-13, the city council at the time broke out the child services program to make it its own fund and try to make it self-supporting. As a result of that, the child care fund had to raise its rates several times to make revenues meet their operational expenditures. If you'd notice that the first rate increase was roughly about 14%, to actually make up that difference. So what that meant was, at the time, it was a general fund that was subsidizing any difference between the fund itself since then. However, since then, as provided in the report, we've raised the rates to make sure that all the revenues meet its expenditures. So based on the report in front of you, as of 12/31/2015, total revenues received by the fund from July till December is roughly $457,000, and total expenditures of $521,000. That means, as of December, the fund is looking at a $64,000 deficit. So what we've done was taken that deficit, look at the number of enrollees they've had, and projected that to see where they would be at year end. So when Child Care Department provided us with number of total enrollees, and as of October, they had 200. If we were to take 200 enrollees and retain that for the next 6 months, from January to June, we would still end up with a deficit of $68,000. So when the Child Care Department gave us again total number of enrollees, as of January 31st, they had 221. At 221 enrollees, if they were to retain these all the way to June, we're only going to be looking at a $3,000 deficit. However, as provided by the Child Care Director, they have 7 applications pending at this time. And being your very conservative finance department, our assumption is if these all 7 were enrolled by the end of February, meaning they will only be for the remaining 4 months. If she were to get them enrolled by the 29th, all the way to June, she would be at a positive $7,000 at the end of June. What I did was put the numbers, the adopted numbers, what our original budget was, to give us a $26,000 surplus so that she could have a reserve. At this time, it is not a revenue issue, so meaning the rates that the department charges is in line with all other daycares. It is capacity. And I believe, as we have provided before, that they are advertising. They're trying to advertise through word of mouth. So it seems to be working to a certain extent. And we also wanted to provide you with an update. So based on the numbers we've provided, break-even point is roughly around 225 enrollees. Basically an average of $5,000 per day in revenue. So in 1 week, that's $25,000 she's got to meet. Now, originally, when we projected this, we did not completely have January's numbers, and we projected at 85. We finally closed January, and her total actual revenue was only $80,000. However, her first 3 days in February have come in at 25 versus 15,000 for an average of, if it was 5,000 a day. So her February's, off to a good start, and we're hoping all the way to the end of June this will be fine. So what the department will continue to do is monitor the number of enrollees, and again, we will come back to you in 60 days to see if our projections confirm what we believe is going to happen for the Child Care Fund. This concludes our Child Care's financial status report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Directors Phillips and Fortune. Does the council have any questions of staff? Okay. See none, and I have no request to speak forms. I'm going to thank you very much for your presentation and bring it back to council to suggest that we have a motion to receive and file. In fact, I will make that motion myself. And since we don't really need a second, we'll just go ahead and vote to receive and file.
Motion passes. 4 ayes, 1 no. Councilmember Hussey Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNable voted aye. Councilmember Wilson voted no.
All right, thank you. We are going to move into our successor agency items. The first item that we have, and if you remember, we are still running this meeting as both council and successor agency. So our first item is to review the agenda and the approval of the check register as a consent calendar, items 1 and 2 for the successor agency. And I'll ask for a motion for those items.
So move.
I'll second then.
Motion and second for consent calendar items and successor agency. Please vote.
Motion passes. 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNable voted aye.
Okay. As the successor agency, we also want to offer the opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda. So at this time, I'll open public comment for items not on the successor agency agenda. If there is anybody that would like to speak. I have no request to speak forms, and I see nobody heading towards the lectern, so I will close public comment and come back to our one remaining item. And that is the approval of successor agencies recognized obligation payment schedule 16-17 in the amount of $2,230,868. May we have a staff report?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. Cynthia Fortune from the Finance Department. Before you is the successor agency's recognized obligation payment schedule, ROPS 1617, in the amount of $2,230,868. This staff report supports City Council goal number 1, ensuring our fiscal viability through the continuous monitoring of revenue receipts and expenditure disbursements against approved budget appropriations. As the agency is aware, redevelopment dissolution has been commenced since February 1st, 2012. Prior to this year, we would always submit 6-month ROPS obligations to the Department of Finance. They changed the rules this year, so before you is actually ROPS 1617 for the whole fiscal year. And we still submitted it broken down in 2 different sections, 16A That should have been 16A and 16B. And as shown to you, total administrative allowance requested for the year is $250,000. We are requesting our bond debt service, both payments that we do during the year, our trustee fees, weed abatement fees, and the debt service owed to the San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. The ROPS obligations were due to the Department of Finance on February 1st. So what staff had requested was to hold a meeting for the Oversight Board. The Oversight Board approved the ROPS on the 1st, and it was submitted to the Department of Finance so that they would not impose any penalties. Penalties for submitting a ROPS obligation late is $10,000 per day for every day that we are going to be late. So to avoid any penalties, we did do that. However, we are here before so that the successor agency also approves the same ROPS. Again, a total amount of roughly $2.2 million. And based on what we've seen for taxes, tax increment, sufficient funding will be available in the trust fund to pay for these enforceable obligations. That includes my report, and I will be happy to answer any questions the agency may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff at this time? No. I have no request to speak forms, and nobody seems to be coming towards for public comments, so we will open and close that and come back to the agency for a motion.
Move for approval, Madam Mayor.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and second for the approval of the successor agency recognized obligation payment schedule and the adoption of a resolution. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Agency members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Vice Chair Robles voted aye. Chair McNamara voted aye.
Okay, thank you. And at the conclusion of that item, we will adjourn the successor agency, and the next regular successor agency meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2016 at 6 p.m. Agenda item request must be submitted in writing to the City Clerk's office no later than 14 calendar days preceding this meeting. And we will continue on with our council meeting with our city manager communications, if there are any.
Yes, Mayor, just very briefly. One of the things that I'm sorry I didn't mention when our consultant, Interwest, was here, is that one of the comments that the naming committee referenced was if there were going to be any improvements to the retaining walls on the freeway, that we try to incorporate the freedom symbol on the walls. So we'll make sure that we report that to Theron, so when he works with I-215, that we will include that as part of our comments. In addition to that, tomorrow night, there will be a special council workshop from the EOP draft plan progress report for the city. And that would be at 6 p.m. tomorrow in the council chambers. I recently returned from the City Managers League of California Cities department meeting, where we had several discussions on major items. One of the interesting things that occurred is that we learned that the League of California Cities will be kind of getting into the health brokering program. And so cities will be able to join the League of California Cities to try and find an alternative to CalPERS overall medical solutions. And on February 16th in the community room at 12 o'clock, the mayor will be speaking at the Chamber of Commerce and should be providing a State of the City address. There will be a flyer going out on Thursday, an e-blast to everyone, notifying people of that. It is free admission, but if you want lunch, there will be a charge for that, and all that information will be included. And that concludes my comments, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Our next item is closed session. So the council will recess to closed session. We will be discussing 3 items. At this time, if there's anybody that would like to speak in public comment on any of these 3 items, now would be the time to do so. I have no request to speak forms. I see nobody heading towards the lectern, so I will close public comment on these items, and we will recess to closed session to review item 13, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, title City Manager. Item 14, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, agency designated representative city attorney, unrepresented employee city manager. And lastly, item 15, pending litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, claim by county regarding city compliance with Government Code 76,000, 76,000.3, and the 70372B. If you are not here with us when we return, our next regular city council meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2016 at 6 p.m. Thank you all who came out tonight, and we at this time will now recess to closed session. Okay, we'll reconvene the city council meeting. The city council met in closed session to review public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, title City Manager. We did give feedback to the city manager on his performance to date. Item 14, conference with labor negotiators, and item 15, pending litigation. We have no reportable actions. At this time, we'll adjourn city council meeting. The next regular city council meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 23rd at 2016 at 6 p.m. Our agenda item request must be submitted in writing to city clerk's office no later than 14 calendar days preceding this meeting. Thank you to staff. Thank you to my colleagues. We are adjourned.